Okay, it's on.
I mean, we're looking, going through it, jumps from whatever it was before to page 224. In my packet, did somebody forget to put pages 1 through 223? Well, it's been moved.
7:15 now. It's wrong. It's got 6:30 before we know it.
She don't respond, but she just squeaks your hand.
You can tell. That's funny.
We love each other.
Now, that's, I'll bet.
You ready, Dave?
I'm ready, go ahead.
Okay. We'll go ahead and get started with our study session here prior to the meeting. The purpose of the study session is to talk about some of the stuff we talked about last month, if you guys remember. It seems like a long time ago, but I think we talked about shipping containers and that kind of thing. And we had some folks that came to talk to us about short-term rentals, if y'all remember.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing, I'll start with the temporary portable structure stuff, the shipping containers. So our building and codes office, as you guys may remember from last month, our codes office is updating the health and safety standards that we have on the books. So what those are, they're basically they're the county's version of, because we don't have a code of ordinances in the county like you would in a city. Everything's adopted by resolution. Our version of what a city would have, what we're allowed to do, is to have something on the books that we've had since 2003, I think. Health and safety standards that govern like tall grass and weeds, junk cars, those kind of. I think a lot of that was authorized by the County Powers Relief Act, which was talked about several years ago, that allowed counties to assume those kinds of police powers. I don't know. There's a long history on it, but at any rate, the county first did it in 2003. And then updated it in 2008. And those standards haven't been touched since. So they've sat where they have been for a long time. The codes office is kind of getting their arms around a lot of changes that really a lot of them are kind of outside the purview of the Planning Commission. But we do incorporate that document into the zoning code. We do reference it and want to pass it in the zoning code. But the most pertinent area that they're looking to revise is related to shipping containers and the use of shipping containers out of the county. And so we get questions a lot from people. There are cajillions of these shipping containers out there across the world, millions and millions of them, and they get bought and sold. There's a whole other market just for buying and selling these shipping containers. So people end up with them. They want to use them for stuff. They want to use them for storage. They want to use them for storm shelters, that kind of thing, underground. They want to use them to live in sometimes. We do have folks that want to turn them into houses and that kind of thing. And so the health and safety standards that we have on the books, which is supported by the zoning code that we have on the books, does not allow shipping containers on any residential lot for any purpose. They're outside of an agricultural use, which would be exempt from our zoning regulations. And so it's very inflexible. And so it's been that way for a very long time. That's just the policy that the county said you can't use them. Now on non-residential lots, industrial and commercial lots, there is more flexibility. You can use the shipping containers. They have a lot of applicability on those sites for keeping materials, maybe things that are being sold and packaged up and moved somewhere else, that kind of thing. So they're pretty much allowed to use them as they want to at least some extent. But on residential lots, can't use them. That's the status quo that we have. And so the codes office came up with some regulations to try to address that. It's an enforcement nightmare, I think, for them. As we talked about last month, for 420 square miles of unincorporated area, we got one codes guy named Todd, and he's the guy that does our codes enforcement for the whole county when it comes to property maintenance and all those things. And so they're looking to achieve a little bit more flexibility. They've met with the Construction Board of Appeals, who has kind of been functioning as a sounding board on this for the codes office, where they work through some of these regulatory amendments. But one thing I discussed with them was we got to make sure that we don't end up with one set of regulations for the health and safety standards that say one thing and have a zoning code that says something completely different. And had that what they had been adopted without any input from the planning commission, that's what we would have had. Our zoning code would have said you can't do it. Their code would have said you could. Which one governs? I'm sure there's one or another that the judge would prefer, but the best thing to do is to just get them in alignment and make sure that they say the same thing like they do now. And so what we've tried to come up with is again, the codes office is looking to allow these things to at least some extent in residential zones. But we don't want it to turn into the Wild West necessarily, where people have shipping containers in their front yard and, it causes the neighbors issues, and you have diminutions in property values and that kind of thing because of all the junk that accumulates and that kind of thing. So, in the document that I've handed out here, special condition, we have something that's being added. The first page on 121 there. Now, when I send this stuff out, I don't send you the whole zoning code, all 350 pages. I just take the portions out that are red text. So page 121, there's just a little bit of clarification that temporary portable structure regulations, that doesn't include shipping containers, because we've added a new section in this here to address shipping containers separately under the special exceptions table, or special exceptions section that we have at chapter 14 of our code. And if you go to the next page, it goes to page 225, and that's chapter 14, section 1414, something, part 2 here, special conditions for shipping containers. And so what we've got here on the first page is general requirements that apply to shipping containers within any residential zoning district. And so that's purposeful. That's to leave the commercial and industrial zoning districts out of it, and to add a bunch of conditions here for residential zoning districts only. And so the general conditions that I have, and I'll just kind of run through these. We've got them. This is pretty strict, and so we're starting strict. And if the board wants to, if you guys want to scale that back and be less strict, then we can work with you to do that, obviously, and amend the text, or we can go more strict. If you're not interested in doing this. The first condition there, number 1, all shipping containers must acquire approval from the Sumner County Board of Zoning Appeals as a special exception prior to being placed on the property. All requirements for special exceptions generally shall apply. And what that means is a plot plan. We have special conditions for special exceptions that, it's compatible with the area and those kinds of things. There's findings of fact that the BZA has to adhere to. And so that just clarifies that they have to meet all those. 2, the BZA is authorized to impose any additional screening, buffering, and additional setback requirements deemed necessary at the judgment of the board. And so that just clarifies that the Board of Zoning Appeals, if they want to see some plantings around one of these things or a fence or something like that, they have the power to do that in that situation. Shipping containers utilized as an accessory use shall meet all county zoning requirements for accessory structures generally, in addition to these standards here, so these shipping standards, and shall be subject to all zoning compliance, building permit, draft connection, and land disturbance permitting requirements. And so what that's saying is you bring a shipping container in, it's got to meet setback requirements. We're going to treat it just like if you bought a shed from the Amish somewhere and you're bringing it in and you're placing it on the property. And so it's got to meet all those setback requirements. You can't put it on the property line. It's got to be at least 5 feet from the property line if it's behind the house and those kinds of things. Number 4, shipping containers utilized as an accessory dwelling shall meet all county zoning requirements for accessory dwelling units in addition to these standards. And so we have a separate process for an ADU. So what that's saying is, you want to use one of these as for somebody to live in. We have standards here that speak to that in more specificity, but you got to meet all our other ADU standards that we have on the books. 5, shipping containers utilized as a primary use shall meet all county zoning requirements for primary structures generally. So that means if you're going to put it on the lot as a standalone use, it's got to meet your minimum setbacks and those kinds of things. It has to get all the same permits that it would. Shipping containers placed in a flood zone, and this has always been our biggest concern about shipping containers. People, I don't know why, but people love to take these things and stick them in a floodway, stick them in a flood zone, and there's one property I know of that we've been into it with them for years about the fact that they've got a bunch of shipping containers staged in the floodplain. Shipping containers placed in a flood zone shall comply with all county floodplain development requirements. In no event whatsoever shall a shipping container be located within the regulatory floodway. And so that's the channel of the river when it gets up, basically where it's moving, the creek where it's moving. So that just kind of references back to Chapter 10 of our zoning code, which is floodplain standards. Then there's some design standards, and I took what the codes office sent me on this stuff and just kind of reformatted it. The following design standards shall apply to all above ground shipping containers. That's a key word, so if you're burying it, there's a different set of standards. Shipping containers placed on developed parcels containing an existing home shall have the same pitch, materials, and design of the house. So that's basically saying you got to add a roof to it, you got to put shingles on it, or whatever. You got to frame it up to look like the house does. That's going to be an interesting enforcement area. 2, exterior metal walls of the shipping container must be encapsulated with pre-approved materials on the rear and both sides. That's something that we would look at the design stage whenever they're going to the Board of Zoning Appeals and would be inspected by the codes office. Next, the front of the shipping container shall either be encapsulated with the same materials as the rear and sides or painted and free from rusty corrosion. So what that's saying is the back and rear is typically going to be facing somebody else's property, so we care more about how it looks than the front that's facing your house, but it does need to be painted. The shipping container must be supported by a continuous footing or be elevated to a minimum of 18 inches from final grade with supporting piers. Obviously, that's something that codes has there. I'd have to defer to them for any questions on how they would expect that. Elevated containers must have brick, block, or similar pre-approved material for skirting and shall be elevated a minimum of 18 inches from final grade. Crawl space access that shall comply with the International Residential Code and be properly anchored to the foundation. And so, very strict. You can bring it into a residential lot, it's very strict. A lot of site-specific standards there. Then we have B here, the following specific requirements shall apply to all shipping containers to be utilized for above-ground storage, in addition to all applicable general requirements noted above. So what that's saying is if somebody's not going to live in it, it's being used for storage. It's an accessory structure, basically, at that point. Under no circumstance shall shipping containers be utilized for storage on vacant lots less than 5 acres. And so what that's saying is we already have standards on the books that say you can't take a platted lot that we have out in the county and bring in an accessory structure and sit in the middle of it without going to the Board of Zoning Appeals. We require you to do that because those 100% of the time turn into an illegal business or something, or somebody ends up living in it without any permits or anything like that. So for years now, we've had a requirement that you can't just place accessory buildings on vacant lots that are smaller. On a big lot, we don't care as much. You still got to get a permit, but it's not a big deal. Shipping containers to be utilized for storage on vacant lots over 5 acres shall have a minimum of there's the gable and the roof stuff that the code's on. So that means if you take it and plop it down on the lot, we still want it to look nice where it's not just a shipping container just sitting there. 3, shipping containers intended for residential storage shall have 90 days from the time it's delivered on site to the issuance of the CO. I need to talk with codes about that a little bit. That was their language. I don't know whether we issue COs on accessory structures. this time. 4, if the property owner fails to receive a CO within 90 days, the building and codes director is authorized to issue one 30-day time extension if in his opinion the permit holder has provided just cause. Shipping containers failing to receive a CO shall be forwarded to the county's Board of Zoning Appeals for revocation of any previously granted approvals. And C, specific requirements for shipping containers used for underground storage or as an underground storm shelter. Those are pretty brief. The first one is that the underground shipping container has to be designed and approved by a Tennessee licensed engineer.
What does that mean exactly, Josh? Are we talking about the placement of it or the actual construction?
The construction of it, yeah. If you're gonna bury it and put dirt on top of it and around the sides of it, there might need, an engineer's gonna have to certify that that shipping container can, whatever it is, there's gotta be a plan that's gonna be stamped by somebody else for the county to approve it, basically. Because the codes office is saying there that they're not comfortable with inspecting something like that that's buried underground.
Do those get used a lot for like a tornado?
Not legally, but they can be. I mean, it's something that's done in other places.
It's like a big prepper kind of bomb shelter.
Absolutely.
Shelter kind of thing.
Absolutely.
That's why I was asking about it.
Yep, and what that's saying basically is the county's not gonna, that's like a mobile container that's been brought in from off-site, basically, and so we don't know what kind of condition it's in, we don't know if it's rusty or if somebody's, put the fork of a forklift through it or something, I mean, basically it's just relying on a third party to certify, and to stamp the thing and say that it's good to go.
You know if the building codes include anything about corrosion
I don't
for
know.
it?
I don't know. This is a little bit uncharted territory for me, to be honest with you.
'Cause I know what happens to steel when it's buried.
That's right.
They usually
That's
cover
right.
that stuff with black tar and put in your
Yeah,
basement, get water.
that doesn't
They
always
coat in
work
that
so
stuff.
well.
And so I'm assuming that's part of what they're gonna want to have certified by somebody.
Yeah.
Because obviously if it's a storm shelter, it is going to be inhabited for at least some length of time. That's the intent of it. And so for us to approve it, we gotta make sure it's safe.
If there's any water table down there,
Right.
it's gonna get out of steel.
Right.
There's moisture in all
And the only other portion of that, any portion of such shipping container remaining above ground shall comply with the design standards contained in the general standards above. So if they bury it halfway or something, you can never tell what folks are gonna do. D, the following specific requirements shall apply to all shipping containers to be utilized as a permanent dwelling, whether primary or accessory, in addition to all applicable general requirements noted above. The shipping container dwelling must be designed by a Tennessee licensed architect and a Tennessee licensed engineer. The design professionals must submit 2 sets of signed and sealed drawings in order for a building permit to be issued.
Do you know why they list architect and engineer?
That's what they had in there. I think they borrowed it from some other jurisdiction, if I was going to guess.
Yeah,
We don't want to get in between our engineers and architects now. That's the
No,
last thing we want to do.
you don't, but at the same time, that, I don't think that's necessary, and it could lead to problems requiring both of those, so, for whatever it's worth.
Duly noted. We will, I'll clarify with the codes office on where that came from. 2 sets of drawings. 3, shipping containers to be used as a permanent dwelling shall meet the following minimum square footage requirements. And so that's just where what they're trying to do here is to get it to over 300 square feet, I think. And so they give you a couple of different ways that you can get, because the county will not permit any dwelling less than 300 square feet. So I think that's, the IBC calls for a minimum of 300 square feet. I'm not sure that's a standard number I've heard thrown around for years.
Those things are usually 8 by 40, so it's 320. And it's
Yeah, and so we have it, you could do 3 shipping containers consisting of 2 8 by 20 and 1 container 8 by 40, or 2 containers. Actually, I guess they're trying to get to 640 something. I don't know. That's another question I have for Marshall. Right. But that's what I've put together here, I've talked with Marshall about amending what they have in theirs as well. He's fine with changing it however we need to do. But again, the goal is to get the two documents into alignment. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question. So if somebody's gonna make this their permanent dwelling, does that still go before the Board of Zoning Appeals?
All of it.
Just when they would never come here? I'm
Right,
just curious.
right, that's right. That's the way it is in here now. We have it so that it's a special exception. The way the state law is set up right now, the way I read it anyway, is special exceptions go to the Board of Zoning Appeals is the route that those go to in the zoning.
No accessory dwellings go there.
All right, right.
A permanent, like if somebody wants to literally make this a home, and it's the only thing on, that lot. I don't know. I'm just-
Well, and so what could be done in that situation, I think, is rather than requiring a special exception, you could require a site plan to be submitted to the planning commission. Y'all have the jurisdiction over site plan review. The Board of Zoning, that's why if I'm gonna do would be a good example. If I'm gonna do a doggy daycare, right, somewhere out in the county, I go to the board, the way that the law, and we have special conditions where it's not allowed by right, where you can just go get a permit. We have it set up so that a special exception has to be issued by the Board of Zoning Appeals. And so what that means is you go to the Board of Zoning Appeals and the BZA, they look at your application and they confirm that you meet all the zoning requirements that are in the zoning code, and that they have their findings of fact they have to do as well. Then, once that's done, it goes to the Planning Commission for a site plan review. And so both in that instance, both bodies get kind of a bite at the apple to some extent. The BZA confirms zoning compliance, that all the basic zoning requirements met, and the Planning Commission reviews it for site plan standards, make sure that all the site plan standards are met. And so it could be, like an example would be, the city of Hendersonville has gone back and forth over the years with accessory dwelling units. Who gets to approve those things? Is it staff? Does it go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a special exception approval, or does it go to the Planning Commission for a site plan approval? And for years it was the BZA, and then they swapped it and they decided, no, we're going to send all of them to the Planning Commission for site plan approval, and now they swapped it back, and now it's back to the Board of Zoning Appeals again for approval of that exception. So it can be done in a number of different ways. But this is to chew on. We're still working on it. Obviously, there's still some stuff I'm not super clear on. It's just one of those things that could, if it's regulated the way that it says here, and if we're able to get folks to adhere to those standards, it's not too big of a deal. But open season on these things, you could see some really, really weird stuff. Really weird stuff with these shipping containers. People putting them all over the place.
I've had 2 inquiries since I've been on the planning commission.
Yeah. There's you go into Nashville, they're doing things now, there's some places maybe out west where they're using them. There's some restaurants that are made of shipping containers. I mean, it's intriguing.
At the soccer stadium, right there above the flea market. It's even got that nice, rusty, there's no need to paint it, because it's all got that burnt rusty. The whole thing. That glass.
Patina?
There you go.
It's patina.
Nice patina.
It's called, it's steel patina.
But you can end up with people, I guess what I'm saying is you can end up with people living in these things and they're not connected to anything. I mean, and we deal with that out in the county sometimes. They don't have a septic system, they don't have electricity run to it, they don't have anything, and somebody's living in it, and then if you don't keep an eye on this kind of thing, it can turn into a problem. And enforcement's a nightmare in the county, it just is. We don't have a city court to take people to. It takes years to get stuff worked out. So
We got one person that will enforce it.
yes, sir. Well, no, I won't say that. So in the field, like doing enforcement out in the field after the fact, right? When we have somebody that's got grandma living in a shipping container in the backyard and that kind of thing. Yes, that's where Mr. Hubbard is going to ride out. He's going to take pictures. He's going to send a letter to the property owner and get it into enforcement. But there's a process that's established for these things within these regulations. And so what that means is that the people that follow the rules will come in, get permits, do things the right way, and we're here to check them all through the process and get it where it's done right. The people that don't, they just put the shipping container out, we'll be writing them a letter, they'll come in, we'll get them into the pipeline. You'll have the 1 out of every 10 that refuses to get a permit, refuses to do anything at all that we ask them to. And that's where we have one guy to take care of it.
So all the shipping containers that are out there right now, it's obviously not complying. They all grandfathered in.
Well, my understanding of grandfather regulations is that if it was illegal when you put it in, it remains illegal.
Still really.
Right. And so if you put it in there without any permits and it doesn't, now if you happen to do it in a way that complied with all the standards, I don't know, maybe, but 99% of them would be illegal non-conforming, basically. That would have to be brought to current standards to get a permit.
Those people aren't going to come in.
They will. I mean, they will. It just takes a ton of staff time to get them in, and letters, and they come in and chew out the staff and that kind of stuff, and then eventually we get them permitted. So there's that. So we're working on that. In the next few months, we'll be proceeding. If y'all are interested in proceeding with this as it is, and as we update it, I'll send it to you. But in the next few months, we'll be bringing it to you guys for a recommendation, and then the county commission to approve the zoning changes. Sure.
And the whole concept of this is, or the end state is to have documents here with us at the planning commission that parallel with the zoning approval.
Right. So it's to make sure that the zoning code and the health and safety regulations, and make sure all the county departments, we're all operating from the same rule book to the extent possible.
Yeah, I'm kind of like where we had to get to some standard a while back on lot sizes. Yeah, I'm with you.
And so, like I said, I welcome feedback. If y'all look at it, you think it's too strict, you think it's not strict enough, you think there's something, if there's something you have a question about, like John, I know you have a question about the architect thing. I'm happy to run those to codes, work with codes in the law office to get answers on what we can do.
I know that, like with a civil engineer, they can design buildings of 2 stories or less without an architect's involvement. If it's 3, an architect has to be involved. So maybe if you stack the shipping containers and you have more than 2, an architect needs to be included. I don't know.
John, who is more important, an architect or a
Wrong person to ask.
An engineer, an architect, and a surveyor walk into a bar. And then, let's see, so the other thing we talked about last month was short-term rental regulations. And so what I have to give you today is going to be a lot to digest. But what I've done is I have taken, I've got a Word version of the zoning code. I've taken and created one version of potential regulations that parallels what the city of Gallatin has on the books. I've taken another set of regulations and paralleled what Wilson County has on the books, because if y'all heard Ben Harris last month, they have started in the last, recently, they regulated it a little bit in a certain zoning district of their county. Since July, they've expanded it to countywide, basically, so they do regulate short-term rentals now. So one version parallels with the city of Gallatin, other version parallels Wilson County, and basically takes their regulations and shoehorns them into ours. And so I'm gonna hand these out.
In the meantime, while he's sending those out, Ron Strahl and I went and did visit Eric Craddock and discussed things that the sheriffs can do right now. And there's one very meaningful one, and it's Tennessee Code Annotated 39-17-305, and it's entitled Disorderly Conduct. Specifically, 3B of disorderly conduct says, a person also violates this section who makes unreasonable noise that prevents others from carrying on lawful activities. And Sheriff Craddock pointed out that lawful activities, one of those is sleeping. So if you are making noise and a lawful activity is to be able to sleep in the middle of the night, you what I want us to think about as we're going through all of this stuff that Josh just gave us, and we're thinking about this over the next couple of months, this, and I can make a copy, or I'll just put this in an email to all of us so that we've got this Tennessee Code annotated. The other thing is the neighbor, the offending neighbor in their neighborhood is, belongs to vrbo.com. Now, last month I had done some research on Airbnb, and they have fairly strict reservation or regulations on what you can and can't do, what they will allow as behavior in their, because they don't want to get in any kind of trouble or a bad reputation. So you have to behave in such a way when you're renting a house that they have the reservation listing for. In just a quick review of VRBO, they have something similar. And so there are regulations that if you know, and if I dig deep enough or make a few phone calls, I'm sure I could find the ones for VRBO. So all I'm saying is that there are things that neighbors can do in the county right now that will guarantee a sheriff's response and potential arrest, and that's this Tennessee Code annotated 39-17-305. And there is also complaints that can be made to the reservation affiliation. So what we were thinking last month, or maybe the month before, that there's nothing the police can do that's not true. The sheriffs have actions that they can take, and the neighbors have actions they can take. So, you know, for instance, if there was, as we were told last month, people running around naked at 2 in the morning, and screaming and blaring music, all the neighbor has to do is say, you know, I'd like you to stop this based on Tennessee Code annotated, blah, blah, blah. And the other thing that can happen for the long term is, hey, Airbnb or VRBO, you have somebody using your reservation system that's not following your rules. So those are a couple of things. Of course, the other things is they can ask to be annexed, or they can form a homeowners association to restrict that kind of behavior in their areas. So I'll put this in an email to all of us, or to Josh. I'll include Josh on it, and I'll just do it for me. And as we're going down this road, we can be thinking about those things as well. Go ahead, Josh.
And one thing as well, you mentioned creating a homeowner association. One other option that neighborhoods do have, my neighborhood actually did this. My neighborhood was built in the 70s. I'm right outside of Gallatin. Adam knows the vicinity. What we did, we've had private restrictions in place since the 70s, and they get updated every so often, right? So we have one lady that comes by the office periodically to check on this stuff, but one of my neighbors has taken it upon herself to make sure that they stay updated all these years. And the last time that they got updated, we added a clause to it stipulating that short-term rentals weren't allowed in the neighborhood as part of the private restrictions. And so the state law is very clear that HOAs and neighborhoods can create and enforce these kinds of standards as well. So that is something that can be done. I've seen it and signed my name to it. As I mentioned, what I did, I created 2 different sets of standards here. They're rough as a cog, so they're not at all ready for any kind of publication or anything like that. But the one was number 205 on the front of it, if y'all could see that. It's page 13 is the first page. That one mirrors the city of Gallatin's standards, and they're pretty strict. They're quite strict. They require a lot of inspections. I believe there's some annual inspection requirements. re-inspections annually by the codes office. And with the city out, then I'm not totally sure if they're able to live up to all that is in their own standards. So it's very, very we have to check on that to make sure. But it's very, very staff intensive to have a set for these set of standards to do exactly the way that the city does it. As I mentioned, staff, we're just here to help write the regulations that the county commission wants to see, take it through the process. Doesn't matter to us, but the concern that I have, I mentioned this the other day, is not doing it, but having the resources available to do it well and to be able to actually implement it. Because we're not there right now, and we're a very, very lean department. And so I think there would be, to do this one, there would be some help that we need, for sure. And the other one that I have is the one with page 140 on the front. What Wilson County did is they have a bed and breakfast homestay, a portion of their code, just like we do. Everybody does. I think there was something in state law a long time ago that required it. They equate bed and breakfast homestay with short-term rental. Basically, they treat them the same, and the approval process is the same. And what they require in the city, in the county, in Wilson County, is Board of Zoning Appeals approval of all short-term rentals. If you want to do a short-term rental in Wilson County, you have to get approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Another thing they require is to get a permit to do it, you have to have at least 2 acres. And so that's a base requirement. And then another requirement that they have that's right there on that first page, 2A, they require an on-site caretaker either living on premises or on a premises within 10 miles of the facility. And so they actually require you to live within 10 miles. I called up there and spoke to the guy that's their new planning director over there. I say new, he's been there for a long time. And talked to him about that. Have y'all got sued about this? I mean, what if you have somebody in California or Nevada or Oregon or Maine or somewhere that wants to buy a piece of property and operate it? That's fine, he can own it, but he's got to have somebody that works for him within 10 miles designated to be 24 hours a day on call to respond if there's an issue at that facility, at the Airbnb. And so that's something that they've been doing. If you look at 2B, it talks about contact information for the local caretaker has to be on file with the sheriff's department, the zoning office, and the emergency management agency. C talks about Department of Health Division of Food and Sanitation where applicable, and so I don't know, they put that in their language, I think, just to cover that base. If you have deals being made in the place, you've got to meet whatever health standards are required. D, this is the biggie for them. They said this is probably the most important thing, and the thing that causes a lot of places not to be able to do it is you have to have viable sewer or septic as determined by TDEC. And so what that means is if you're approved for 3 bedrooms, you can't have a 5-bedroom short-term rental. If you're approved for 2 bedrooms, you can't have a 3-bedroom. So your septic permit has to match what you're going to do. And if they get a complaint, if somebody is, if it's approved for 3 bedrooms, and they get a complaint that somebody's having 15 people there, or something like that, they're implicitly in violation, basically. And so they haul them back before the Board of Zoning Appeals to hear about getting the permit removed. They either do that, or I think what he said they actually do is they accumulate complaints. And when your time comes up to be renewed for the permit, they have a file with all the complaints to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and the Board of Zoning Appeals has the option not to renew the permit, basically. And again, I said, y'all haven't been sued over that. He said, no, well, nobody. We've had it in place for years, and nobody sued us yet. And so it was very intriguing the way that they do it there. Again, 2E, minimum lot size, 2 acres. That keeps the small lots, keeps of course, the PUDs, the really small lots that we have on sewer throughout the county, they already have rules against these things. Not to say that they're not 100%, not to say they're 100% followed, but they usually do. But it's the other neighborhoods out in the county that don't have an HOA, that don't have the restrictions in place. And then if the use will be approved in increments by the County Board of Zoning Appeals with the option to request renewal or extension at the time of that period. And so the BZA does that anyway. They approve almost every special exception for a 2-year period. And after 2 years, you come back. There's a renewal period. And so that's the way they do that. And then, if you look on page 290, bed and breakfast homestay has a big honking definition there that spells out most everything that I just said. You have to have a caretaker within 10 miles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can see on the big sheet, page 304, just added short-term rentals and bed and breakfast homestay. And they can be permitted or not permitted or special exception, as long as there's a reasonable reason to do it, however y'all want to do it, if there's interest in it.
When you talk to them, have they discussed any kind of license fee or anything for these kinds of things, that the funds could be given to people like the county sheriff?
Well,
May have increased interaction with these locations?
I think the only fee that they have is just whatever they charge for their special exception, whatever that is. So like for us, it's a $500 special exception application. And then when they're, the initial time is $500, and I think there's a $300 renewal that's every 2 years. So,
Just thinking that,
yeah.
you know, the extra resources that are now being engaged, that we have to put somebody on file. The sheriff's department is like, emergency services.
It's a new thing for everybody, essentially, is what it would be, yeah. And taking the money and splitting it up, it just goes into the general fund, as it's where to go. And so it would be up to the finance office if it was going to be assigned in some way.
But with all of these requirements, there's still a grandfathered in clause.
That's right. So it's important to go back and remember, and it's in there in the big honking definition that I mentioned, where it says there's a line in there that references that portion of the state law that says this has no effect on those. And so everybody that has a short-term rental today is grandfathered in. There's nothing you can do about any of the problem sites or anything else now. In terms of the zoning, they're grandfathered in perpetuity. New ones that come in, they have to comply with these requirements.
But if there was a homeowners association created, they're not grandfathered in.
I think there still are. I think they still are.
They still are.
Yeah, the legislature was pretty careful to protect the existing.
And same with annexation until that ceases being
That's right.
a short term.
That's right. The city wouldn't. Well, not necessarily until it ceases. What the statute says is until it sells.
Oh,
So it's the only grandfathering thing that I know of in state law where you lose the grandfathered non-conforming status when you sell it. Everything else, if I've got a grandfathered gas station, it rolls with the property, no matter how many times it gets sold. But this legislation was clear that when you sell it, you lose that grandfathered status.
I sound like a broken record, but people move to the county for less government regulation. There's other options that they can do if they, have a problem like an HOA or whatever. And I've said it all before, like, people in the county live in the county for a reason. We have volunteer fire departments. You're not gonna have the city come to your rescue if your house is burning down. It's the same scenario. We'd have to have more staff to regulate it, and that's not the kind of budget. I can guarantee you that. So it's silly because a couple people use the regulations that Commissioner Klein, or who else went with me, I went to the sheriff, use those regulations and just keep hitting on with those violations. But I'm telling you, those people in California that are making God knows what a night on that lakefront property, don't give a crap about getting hit with a court fee and a court cost and a violation. They're gonna keep doing it. They're not gonna sell it. It's not gonna help. And I am for the least amount. I want things to be done correctly. I don't want anybody's property devalued, but I also am for the government, especially in the county, minding their business.
Yeah, and of course, we don't do fiscal notes like they do with the state legislature, but I think either option.
I don't like any of it, so I would say no to all this. That would be.
Either one, I think there's a fiscal impact in terms of staff. I think there's another person that's gonna be needed as a result of
We
it.
can't afford that.
I would say that one not in cover.
You say what?
One wouldn't cover it.
No.
I mean,
No.
not,
Do we have an update on, the last time we brought this subject up and talked about it, we were real uncertain about just what density is out there. Do we have a better handle on that now?
Not really, to be honest with you. It's so ephemeral. All you can do really is just pull it up and say, search within Sumner County. And then and I asked Wilson County the same question, is there some tool that y'all found to be able to sort through these things? And they said, no, you just go on Airbnb and just look to see what's going on outside the city limits if it happens to be available in that time period where you're searching. And of course, they've gotten good about not putting the addresses on there. So you can find the short-term rental that you want, but it doesn't show 123 Smith Lane. It just says beautiful 4-bedroom house in a rustic
And until you
location.
book it, you don't get the address.
And so you got to go back. That's right. Then you got to look at the pictures and then figure out which one, where it is, and all that stuff. Yeah, so it's figuring out where they're at and which ones are which that'll be an ordeal.
Yeah, Josh and I have discussed this in great depth, and the costs to the county would be severe, because it's not just one person, it's many, because people sign up and leave their reservation affiliation all the time. And so it's a constant monitoring and trying to find out, okay, today who has got a short-term rental, because it's different than it was yesterday, maybe. I don't think it will turn over that often, but you have to stay on top of it. And then there's enforcement, and there's all kinds of things. It's a big deal, a really big deal, and very expensive deal, so we need to consider all of that as we're talking about it. And I appreciate Commissioner Miller's opinion on it, because I know that she echoes several of the commissioners that I've spoken to about it, that there is a reason people move to the county unincorporated, and there's reasons people move into the cities. So those should all be considerations as we're considering these.
The only other thing I had to talk to you guys about, just very, very high level, probably try to talk to you about it next month some more maybe, because we're running up on some budget deadlines. But one thing we're looking at with our land disturbance permit, some of our process, is TDEC has required everybody to update their stormwater regulations. There's been an update to the construction general permit that gets done every 3 or 4 years, and everybody has to update their stormwater regulations to accommodate whatever TDEC, new stuff TDEC said everybody has to do. And so as part of that, we're looking at the fees we collect and the permits that we issue and those kinds of things, and trying to figure out ways to make things customer friendly. I don't know if that's the right word, but more efficient on our end for sure. And maybe not requiring permits, certain kinds of permits for certain things, to shift toward more intensive activities. And so one of the things we're taking a look at right now, we require a land service permit for all new construction over 500 square feet. So if you want to put a building on their property that's over 500 square feet or add on to your home, you have to get a land service permit. You have to get a land service permit. You also have to get a driveway permit. You have to do a zoning compliance form. It can take way too long sometimes to get through the process, because everybody has their piece of it that needs to get done. And so one of the things we're looking at is increasing that 500 square feet to maybe 1,000 square feet or 1,500 square feet. Now what that would mean, number one, that there'd be a whole lot of people that could get their little project taken care of a whole lot faster. And the turnaround would be a matter of maybe walking in and getting the permit, almost. So that would be a great benefit. On our end, it would allow us to focus our efforts, instead of going out to check 500 square foot shops that are being put out on somebody's property, which probably not ever going to cause a problem, to focus our effort on the development side of things, where we only have 2 stormwater staff. And so to zero in on those kinds of things and focus that effort where it's more needed. But you can't just cut out all those permits without having a significant revenue impact. And so probably what we would be talking about doing is in the name of the homeowner, to at least some extent, who's doing very, very small projects, not requiring a permit anymore for those types of things, But for the bigger projects, increasing that fee a little bit to try to offset that. And so what that does is it like I said, it lets us focus our time on places where the jobs really matter, where there's more likelihood of stormwater impacts and that kind of thing. Proximity to streams, those kinds of issues. And to let some of the smaller stuff, the really small stuff go that will require a permit that eats up so much of our time. So I just want to put that on your radar. That's something that we'll probably be talking to the budget committee to some extent about. And we have to get our budget submitted by March 1st. And so I'm pushing up on that deadline here before too long, but that's something I want to talk with them about. And obviously you guys have a stake in that as well. And so it's just something that we've been looking at for a while.
How often does TDEC change? Is it
No, it's, they haven't updated it. They haven't updated it in a way that required us to change our regulations since 2016. So it's been a while. It's been a while. It's been almost 10 years. So.
With these new TDEC enhancements and additions that are coming on, you know, where we're at, you know, some parts of Sumner County, we have lots of road systems that have been there for years that absolutely would not comply. I mean, it's like, why do we still keep updating and maintaining road systems that don't even fall? You know, to me, a road is not a grandfather clause. It's not owned by anybody personally. It's a state, well, I guess the land is, but I'm talking about the road itself. You know, it seems like, I mean, we just went through another terrible rain.
Mm-hmm.
And we see the roads gonna have to be coming back repaired. And it's like, well, first of all, there's no development in that area. It's just a road going across a piece of land. I know we can't do it here, but it seems to me that needs to be done somewhere. That we need to take a look at some of our road systems that are inadequate. It just doesn't even make sense. And why do we still maintain to keep these roads open? Seriously.
Yeah, and there's certain circumstances where the county has abandoned roads and that kind of stuff in the past, but it's the legislature makes it hard to abandon a roadway, and the reason for that is because so much of a property's value is tied up in its road access and its potential to be, you know, not even developed really, but like to take 5 acres and give it to somebody and get a building permit with the county. That building permit requires access to a public road. So it has to be a public road that's on the county road list. And so when you take that away, you can have a taking where they're entitled to compensation basically as part of that. So that's one of the big stumbling blocks. The two, and the state legislature makes it real difficult to abandon roads. There's a couple of processes that you can follow to abandon.
We sure have no
roadways.
problem putting them in.
A lot of those roads, well, you know, a lot of those old country roads have been here since
Long time.
wagons, you know, were riding on and that kind of thing. But I think that's all I got time for.
One quick
Sir, yes, sir.
The one that starts at 140, this one is which one?
Sorry, what?
The
Say,
packet?
oh,
Yeah, 140. This is Wilson?
Wilson County.
yes, yeah, the one that talks about bread and breakfasts is the Wilson County. The other one is the city of Gallatin. What I did was I took their regulations and dropped them in.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Huh?
Yes.
You want to do the pledge?
That needs to until you drive up to us.
We're inviting you. Might be a bad rumor.
I didn't tell you. This is what I took with me to Gary. David Klein's students. They're in the one bedroom lunch home, because I didn't pack it on the trip. And guess who didn't decide to go to the this morning? 10:30. Yeah, he's on. Just need to say his address. Oh, that's still on.
Okay, welcome everybody. It's 5:05. The snow is coming, so we're going to crack the whip here. We will start with the invocation by Ron Strahl, followed directly by the Pledge of Allegiance by Chairman Chris Miller. Please stand.
Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us here this evening. Dear Lord, please be with the elected officials of this great county, the county leadership, and ensuring that good decisions are made. Dear Lord, keep us focused on being good stewards of the assets that we have to manage before us. In Jesus' name, pray.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from January unless there are any changes?
I
You have some changes?
have minor.
Okay.
On page 8, third paragraph, stated is misspelled. fifth paragraph, Mr. Sutter stated that these is water quantity. Grammatically, it's bad. And the third paragraph from the bottom, same page 8, Mr. Sutter, that he does not know. I think you're missing a said, perhaps.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. With those changes in mind, do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Motion by Mr. Issa, second by Mr. Straw. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstaining. Christina. Okay, we have an agenda. Any changes needed that we need?
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I have is just a very brief director's report after item number 3. So if we can insert that as item number 4, director's report,
Okay.
and change adjournment to number 5. Apologies for that.
With those changes in mind, you have a motion to move by Commissioner Miller, second by Mr. Issa. All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. Mr. Sutton, you were at the batter's point.
Yes, sir. Let me fix my view here. Okay. Mr. Chairman, the first item on the agenda this evening is Lewis Head Commercial Plaza, 135 West George Road, site plan. This piece of property is located near the intersection of State Route 109 and West Roberts Road. The subject property contains one 5.05 acre parcel. This piece of property is zoned planning and development, or PUD. It was rezoned and the concept plan was approved by the Sumner County Commission in March of 2021. They're not proposing any uses aside from what's allowed on the master plan for this. The concept plan is what we call it. So the proposed allowable uses remain unchanged from the original of the approved PUD. And the proposed structure, as I understand it, is a spec building, and so that spec building can a variety of uses would be allowable. They have to comply with the PUD use table. So a pre-app that I had with the applicant, the likely use of the facility would be automotive services and repair, which is noted as the proposed use on the master plan. It was indicated as proposed at that time, several months ago, during the pre-app meeting for this. But that said, other uses that are noted on the concept plan would also be allowable, construction, sales, and services, and any number of other uses. And so they did, concern we had was, can those uses be accommodated of the parking that's shown on the plan, and they provide a calculation showing that again. The property owner developer is Mr. Lewis Head. The project representative and designer 615 Group, CJ Morrell. I don't think Mr. Merle is here this evening. Is there anybody from 615 Group? Okay, we're not ready for you just yet. I just want to make sure somebody's here. And I've received some correspondence as well from an attorney representing this item, Thomas Mark. Background on this is a property the Planning Commission has seen several times in the last few years. But it was rezoned for planning and development by the Sumner County Commission in March of 2021. The site plan came forward from Dollar General in April of 2021, so the following month. It was approved by the Planning Commission at that time. The developer was required as part of that site plan approval, and actually as a part of the PUD approval, the rezoning when it was approved, a widening of West Roberts Road was required across the Dollar General frontage and to this particular lot as well. And so that was completed in 2022 as per the approved traffic study. Various other applications have come through. The Planning Commission, I remember one recently that came through to add an additional building to amend the PUD. That ended up being denied by the County Commission. And so what's before the Planning Commission tonight is what has been approved by the County Commission previously. That's approved uses, approved building, approved site layout. And so what that means is that this site application is being submitted as a by right application pursuant to that original approval. So they're asking to do what the zoning and the master plan allow them to do. This is the subject property. And so the existing Dollar General, you can see it's here. This is another lot that was subdivided off. There was a proposal on that with some mini storage a while back. That was unsuccessful. This parcel was approved for some retail uses and that kind of thing. This was what's shown in the proposal. And this parcel, this 5-acre parcel right here in hand, is proposed to have one building shown on the site plan constructed on it. This is the zoning around it. This may be an old step from a previous presentation. This actually, I think the area around it now is zoned for rural preservation. But these parcels here are zoned planning and development. This is from the PUD concept plan. And just bear in mind that north is this way. So they have laid out a little string through it. This is the property that as it was envisioned at the time with detention and septic and parking and 10,000 square foot building was proposed here. With the drive access to tie into the Dollar General site. And so they would share it. We do have a truck turn exhibit as well, just to make sure that vehicles can get back. This is the same sheet, just reoriented north and south, so it looks a little bit more realistic. So again, what they're proposing, you see the site plan, you see it's pretty much what they said they were going to do here. In terms of the building and the substantial items of the proposal, it's basically identical to the approval. Site plan here, kind of zoomed in a little bit so we can see a little bit better. They have their surfacing labeled. This is supposed to be heavy duty asphalt here where the vehicles will be using the building. Parking is a lighter duty asphalt. Again, parking requirements. There's let's see, where's my parking? 37 spaces provided with a couple of ADA. And so with the 10,000 square foot building, likely uses would be automotive repair and services, 1 space for each employee, plus 4 for each service bay. There's a couple of service bays on this thing, and so they greatly exceed parking for that. Same thing for construction sales and services, which only requires 1,000 square foot for each. So one space per 1,000 square foot with 1 for each employee, so they can satisfy that. And then in addition, they want to pursue another use in the building. It'd be hard to see some of these being feasible in a building like this, but they're more than adequate for all those other uses as well in terms of parking. This is the truck turning exhibit that I mentioned. I'm just demonstrating that a vehicle can make the loop around the building and get back in and out. This is the architecture that was approved with the PUD concept plan, primarily brick. It's kind of hard to tell from the black and white sheet. We appreciate the folks over at 615 Design Group being very responsive to our comments. One of our comments was to give us a color rendering, which they did. So this is the architectural elevations, as you can tell, they basically match what was approved with the original plan and development. And of course, that's done by an architect as well. So some architectural plans there. This is the side view of it. Again, mostly brick. Roads. West Roberts Road, as I mentioned, has been widened along the frontage of this tract as part of the Dollar General project. It's actually the westernmost tract of the PUD. They did turn in a traffic impact analysis when this came through, and what that traffic impact analysis indicates that there were no additional improvements to State Route 109 because there is a left turn deceleration lane in place already. And so if you're coming northbound toward Portland, you can make a left turn with a dedicated lane to get out of traffic. This traffic study was conducted in 2020, which obviously was COVID time, and that is noted in the traffic study. What was done, TDOT did the same thing. There's a factor that was applied, and on the numbers, I don't remember them exactly off the top of my head, but it was something like a factor of 1.43 was applied up the traffic counts to get to your peak hour data in order to normalize them. And so, actually, I mentioned it before, probably when I worked at TDOT, I oversaw the traffic count program for the Tennessee Department of Transportation. And so that's something that is commonly done at the state level as well. If you happen to have to get out to the counts in a location that's out of school, for instance, you did the counts in July, there's a factor that gets applied to them in order to normalize them and bring them back up. And so at any rate, there was an agreed upon factor that was applied to the traffic study at that time. And the traffic improvements that were required were basically limited to the widening of the road in front of the Dollar General and this parcel as well. And those, as I mentioned, have been completed at this time. And so just to kind of show you what things look like at the road. So I'm coming up from Gallatin, headed northbound toward Portland. Make a left here, you see the dedicated left turn lane that gets you into the Roberts Road. And Dollar General back here, and this other parcel next to it. If I'm headed southbound, see there's obviously it's a 4-lane divided roadway throughout its length, but there's a left turn lane here as well as a buffer lane, and then a good shoulder as well if they get off. And so this would be headed southbound the turn on the Roberts Road. And again, the subject property is back over here right next to the Dollar. This is that subject property. This is taken from Google Street View. They were actually out here a few days ago. They've been taking photos or footage, whatever you want to call it, the street view across Sumner County in the last few days. So this was done in February 2025. You see other residential area construction that's been done around the same time, just to the west. When I say at the same time as the Dollar General. The Dollar General rezoning was approved and all that prior to any of that being built down there. Grading and drainage, they did turn in a couple of really good exhibits to demonstrate how the property is going to drain and stormwater is going to be handled. But this is the overall grading plan. You see there are 2 detention basins that are proposed. One is toward the rear of the property, and the other is up here toward the road, which is in that natural drain that moves east to west along Roberts Road. So it's designed to capture storm water and to mitigate the impact of the impervious surface they gather from the building and the parking lot and all that. They have submitted a full set of construction plans and drainage calculations. Upon review, it looks like all the county stormwater management requirements are met related to water quantity and water quality. The calculations that they provided, I think I have on some subsequent slides here, they show significant reductions in off-site runoff. So you have to look at it pre versus post. So how much is leaving the site pre-development, how much is leaving the site post-development. And calculations show the county's water quality requirements for that as well. And the grading plan shows the detention basins to the front and rear. We will require a stormwater maintenance and inspection agreement. They have provided a draft of that using our template prior to a CO being issued on the property, maybe a building permit actually. We will require this stormwater maintenance agreement to be completed and recorded with the Register of Deeds. That's what that does, is it gives the county the right to conduct inspections and binds that property to maintain the detention facilities that are there on site. And so this is the plan sheet that was turned in for detention pond number 1. Again, I want to compliment 615 Design Group. I like the way that they did this. We may actually require something like this in the future. They put their stormwater calculations on the same sheet, just so that it's very clear for each pond what it's doing pre versus post. And they put their water quality calculations as well, which are a little bit engineering. If we're looking at the detention pond number 1, which is, I believe this is the one at the front of the property, closest to Roberts Road. You can see this is pre-development outfall 1, the pre-development storm amounts, And post-development storm analysis, you see, they're basically cut in half, pretty close, so that there is a significant reduction in post-development stormwater flows as a result of the pond. And then the same thing for detention pond number 2. There's a significant reduction, again, about, 40 to 50% reduction in pre-development versus post-development flows that you see with pond 2, which is back in the rear of the lot. I have to be partial to explain if y'all want any more detail on this, but some of the internal features to the pond, you have these kind of, it's like a rock wall almost within there. I think it's kind of like a gate basket kind of thing that helps to filtrate water as it goes into the site and clean it before it gets down in here and discharges out of the pond. Landscaping, parking, lighting. The county zoning resolution does have requirements for landscaping and buffering for commercial DVDs. The fund that was approved for this one requires a 25-foot type 2 landscape buffer, and that's been provided. I believe they actually have a 35-foot setback buffer indicated on that western property line. The parking requirements have been addressed, and they've turned in a photometric lighting plan as well that demonstrates that the lighting is basically going down. It's down-facing lighting that is projecting a lot of light pollution onto adjacent properties or anything, and that meets our county's requirements as well. This is the landscape plan I referenced. See, there's the buffer is here. As I said, I think they've got a 35-foot buffer along this property line right here. 25 feet here, and again, there's no landscape buffer that's necessarily required on the Dollar General side. And they did have some landscaping shown that. This is that photometric lighting plan. Again, the way they did this is good because it helps really illustrate the way that the lighting is going on site. Utilities and fire protection, public water is to be provided by White House Utilities. There is a fire hydrant. I'll show you where it is. Right here. There's an existing hydrant right near the corner of this lot along Roberts Road. The proposed building is proposed to be served by a septic system, and they have furnished a septic soils map. It's been stamped by a soil scientist and a septic permit application. They gave us a copy of the application. It's been filed with TDEC. This is their utility plan. It has 2 mapped septic areas, one here and one here. This is the soils map that they provided. That was done a while back for the Dollar General site and this property as well. You see the 2 mapped soils areas. No signage is proposed at this time. However, it is a requirement that they have to get a sign permit prior to installing any signage, whether it's on the building or ground mounted. They have to get a sign permit just like the Dollar General did for their site. In terms of our comp plan, as we've talked about before, our comp plan is old and out of date, and State Route 109 was not necessarily envisioned on that plan to be constructed where it is today. It shows the old state route. And so as y'all know, we're working on our comp plan. The new State Route 109 and the Portland bypass and all that will have to be incorporated into the new comp plan. As has been noted for many years since this project first came through, the property's close proximity to State 109. Obviously, the marketability is there. We get a lot of requests on things up and down 109, as you guys have seen. So it is logical to have commercial uses and those kinds of things, resident and light industrial uses along that state highway. However, that's not the 109 line is not reflected in the comp plan at all. We have on file now. So you see where it is. It's in that rural place right here. General next steps, following approval of the site plan and the stamping of the construction plan by the county engineer, they will schedule a pre-con meeting with staff. Upon any issuance of their state permits, that notice to go to TDEC and the drive permit. That's left over from another application. mispronunciation, there's no T-dot access going to be required. It'll be a county permit, a county drive permit at most, and they may not even need that because they're utilizing the existing connection. But upon issuance of those state permits, they can get a land disturbance permit from the county, and they can start grading and doing construction once they get all their county permits. We would require any proposed user that's going to go into the structure as a spec building, and so we have a condition of approval that anybody that's going to move into the building needs to come talk to the county first and get us to certify that they can comply with the approved uses that are on the plan. So, example motions on the screen, Mr. Chairman. Example motion number 1 is to approve this site plan related to construction of a 10,000 square foot commercial building and associated improvements. And the contingencies there is 1, obtaining the construction plan approval from the county engineer, 2, getting the land disturbance permit, 3, obtaining applicable state permits, complying with the building code is condition D, so all applicable building code requirements shall be met. E, we're not going to issue any permits until they get a septic permit from TDEC. That is the first thing on their list prior to pulling a building permit is that they have to have a septic permit. F, as I mentioned, if the beginning is on a compliance form, and then G, sign permit for any signage. This square meter on there will have a sign in all languages, so they have to get a sign permit. Example motion number 2 would be to deny this site plan. I would note that all the county's requirements do appear to be met, and there would not appear to be grounds for a denial. 3, to defer this item for a month in order to obtain additional information. On site plans, the planning commission is required to act within 90 days of the receipt of a complete application. And so if the deferral is in order, it could be deferred. And that concludes my presentation, Mr. Chairman. I believe somebody from 615 Design Group is here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there anybody who's on a sheet to speak? We have one.
You already signed up? Mr. Robert Edens.
Please state your name and address and statements.
Robert Edens, 141 West Roberts Road. We talked about this all last year. Pretty much, as y'all noticed on here, it doesn't say one building. It says commercial plaza. And we talked about the water that was where it goes, and it, just last week, river going across the front of my yard. I mean, y'all could come out and seen it. I showed y'all pictures of this last year and how it runs. We talked about the 4 to 5 houses down below me. From then on, they're on well water or spring water. All their water is fed from this place. We talked about where if they do this, even if what they do just the maintenance building, that's fine, but they have to look at where that water is going and how they're taking care of the water issues that we have. We've talked about, even some of y'all have mentioned, what are the deferment between the residential and the commercial property. Those little 2-foot trees that they put up by the dollar store doesn't work. We even talked about doing a berm to try and make sure that didn't go down there. Nothing has been met from as far as the residential community out there sees it's being taken care of. Y'all even said yourself to bring in sewer there would be a big deal for that to happen. Our water is coming from White House. Everybody knows that. We have no sewer out there. Those people are unseptic. There is no drainage for that to go in except for the water system that they're getting their water from. So why do we keep bringing this up? We went through this all year long. I don't see a change. I don't see a change to the plan. Where's the water going to go? We talked about the truck entrance. You said it's going to be a maintenance. That's great. Why is it still stated on here it's commercial plaza? Your own words, own writing, it says commercial plaza. Where are we going with this? How are we going to continue with this? When are we going to start thinking about the people of this county and community and how they're being treated? Because somebody else wants to push us through. I didn't get notification of this. I had to keep calling every month just to find out what's going on. And I live the next house over. Yes, I'm past that 500 foot because Lewis Head owns a residential lot between me and them. That's why we don't get notified. Nobody's notifying nobody. As a residential neighborhood, I personally send out emails to everybody in the community. I've personally been an elected spokesperson. There's another person here now. We need to have a better way of communication. If we don't design it now or come up with a way to communicate better, where are we going with this? You're Sumner County. Help us out. That's all I've got.
This is one versus seven. Go ahead, Mr. Issa.
I have a question. Josh, maybe you might know the answer to this. It looks like they're plotting 2 septic on this property. Is that necessary, or is that, trying to understand that for one single building that seems excessive?
Yes, sir. Every lot that gets approved in the county has to have 2 septic systems mapped. You have to map, let me rephrase it. You have to map enough septic soils area to install a duplicate system. And so what that means is so all the lots that you guys might see that come through for residential purposes and that kind of thing, they will usually have 2 septic soils areas mapped, or they will have one that's big enough that should they install a septic system and it fail in 20 years, that there's enough area to install another septic system to replace it.
Okay, so we're talking about a backup.
That's right.
It's not necessarily.
That's right. That's right. It's a backup area, so if one system fails, then there's enough area there to install a totally new system.
Thank you for clarification.
And Commissioner Miller. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, just to point of clarification, Lewis Head Commercial Plaza, there seems to be some confusion about that. That's the name of the planning and development that was approved years ago. That doesn't imply that this can be multiple buildings or anything like that. That's the name of the project that the county commission approved in 2021. And then I think there's a question about notification. So for rezonings and plan amendments and that kind of thing, we do notification in the newspaper. Adjoining property owners get notified by certified mail. For plats and site plans and final right applications, there's not any notification that's conducted as far as notifying neighbors or anything like that. So that's not something that the zoning code requires or the state law requires, and so the county does not do it. So I just want to clarify that.
Go ahead, Commissioner Miller.
And there's been some confusion because this was a commercial plaza, and Josh, am I correct, some of it got sold, and then some of it's still in Mr. Hill's name, is that correct?
That's right. So if we can, I'll go back. So there were 2 parcels that were approved when it was originally approved. There were 2 5-acre tracts. It was this one and this one. And so this one was approved with the Dollar General. They subsequently subdivided that lot because there were 2 proposed uses on the same lot basically, and so they subdivided the lot after the fact. This is approved, as I mentioned, for some commercial retail type stuff. With the connector road that goes through here. This is the Dollar General site. So this half of it was sold to the Dollar General Corporation in some way. It's not under Mr. Head's ownership at all anymore, and all under his control. This parcel over here has been retained by Mr. Head. I believe he also owns this one, but it's not included in this proposal. It's approved for a residential lot. So if Mr. Head wants to build him a house there, he wants to sell a house and somebody else wants to build there, then they can do that. So it effectively functions as a residential buffer, I guess you might say. It wasn't intended that way, but there's a landscape buffer. That is the buffer that the county did require. But these 2 pieces over here were sold to Monty Turner, I think is the guy's name that does a lot of land development for Dollar General. And of course they put them in these LLCs. So this is owned by some LLC, something rental, something or another. But this parcel back here is still owned by Mr. Turner, I believe. Hope that answers your question.
So there's nothing on the bottom parcel, the 2.75?
None at this time. The planning and development that was approved, again, to go back to that plan sheet. So this is the Dollar General. This is a little retail outlet type building that was approved. And then this right here is the property under consideration this evening with one 10,000 square foot building. This has been constructed already. This is not. This is proposed to be constructed.
Mr. Sutton, did we deny the 2.75 acres for a storage?
They were gonna change, they wanted to amend the plan. And so when you want to amend the plan unit development, it goes through a much bigger, more involved process with neighborhood meetings and that kind of thing. And so what they sought to do was to amend this piece of the plan here to put mini storage. I forget the number of units, but it was a whole lot more intensive in terms of land coverage than what's approved for now. And so the county commission denied that. Yes, sir.
Mr. Strong, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment, especially on the new 109 is not part of our comprehensive plan. I think it's very significant. I noticed on the sheet of, on the overhead that, Josh, we'll go back to where.
Which one was it going
The one that was up there.
That?
No, when it's approved, denied.
No, I'm sorry, the exact motion.
Yeah, thanks. It says on there, no, all county requirements appear to be met, and I respect that. But I would like to bring up, as I look at the traffic study, the traffic study, which is interesting, because it appears it was done in 19 and 20, then updated with, as you consider to be factors, which doesn't make sense, in 22. And we're making a recommendation, or would make a recommendation based on saying that this study says it can be supported with only minor improvements. And it talks about widening the road and trimming trees, and I'm not too sure those trees are even there anymore. But as I look at that, and I'm looking at this old data, and then I start looking at this traffic study, and I'm a numbers guy, and I look at the data, the actual data from 2019, and then at 2020, and maybe it don't really matter, because that was all during COVID time, when we didn't have hardly anybody out on the road. But when you take those factors and you multiply by factor, and I got that, that is a way to project future count. I got that. But ladies and gentlemen, we're looking at 2025. And when I took those factors and took the 1920 factors and broke it to 2025, now I'm seeing numbers of 854 cars originally in a couple of hours to a projected 1,221 cars in 2025. Now, it's hard for me to believe that a traffic study that could be almost realistically 6 years old, that we're making a recommendation to approve or not approve on ODOT. I think we owe the citizens of Sumner County better than that. Also, as we look at this, I wasn't around when Dollar General was approved. We can't speak for the planning commission during that time because they're not here, I don't believe. But I'm not too sure that was really a good decision to approve that right then. Because when the 109 corridor and expressway went through, I believe there were some informal agreements that informal promises were made to the residents up and down 109 that it would be an expressway with no commercial development. But somehow, amazingly, a Dollar General got put in. Do we continue on that path? I would say if we do, we need to have updated traffic flow to determine whether or not there still only needs to be minor improvements. Thank you.
Mr. Sutter, that statement was news to me. Was this supposed to be a commercial corridor or an expressway with only on-ramps and off-ramps?
It was not designed to be an expressway. So an expressway implies controlled access, and so like I-40, right, is a controlled access roadway where you can't just cut your driveway on the I-40, right, to access your farm, right, or your business. And so it's not controlled access, it is limited access though. And so what the state did was to continue to allow each property owner whose property runs along Highway 109 from Gallatin all the way up to 401. Each property owner got one drive access, right? So each and every parcel that goes up and down that road has the right to the one access onto the road. What we've done over and above that, though, is to impose zoning, because one of the things that Mr. Schroff they might be referring to is it's called a corridor management agreement. That was between Gallatin, Portland, Sumner County, TDOT, Lebanon, and Wilson County. I think that's everybody. And so that was an agreement that was made basically to try to control the access and to do exactly what has been proposed with this development. And so that what this development did lives up to the spirit, the letter, and the intent of that agreement. Because we did not allow this development to have direct access on the Highway 109, even though they do have a lot that fronts along 109. They probably could have exercised the right to put a drive there anyway. But through the PUD process, we did not allow that. So we required all the traffic to go onto an existing county roadway, which is West Roberts Road. And so the TDOT will tell you, their goal and maintain roadways in the state is to move commerce and people, efficiently from point A to point B. And so we've got some access controls that we put in our zoning code since that time when this was approved. That match up with the city of Portland exactly. And basically what it does is you're entitled to one curb cut along Highway 109, but we won't allow new traffic signals to be put in any closer than 1 mile to the next traffic signal. We won't allow new roadways to be cut in any closer than 1,400 feet to the next roadway. So there are some significant access controls in place, but this particular development, in terms of access on the 109, it's doing just exactly what was envisioned. Again, I worked at TDOT at that time. One of the things I did was these corridor management agreements. I worked on the one with Sumner County and Wilson County that made up the Highway 109 corridor management agreement. And so the fact that they have all the traffic goes directly onto a county road before it gets to the state highway. That's what you want to see. That's the way you manage. That's the way you manage traffic over the long term, is to do things the way that this development has been required to be done.
Is that an involved document in corridor management?
Not really. It was kind of high level, to be honest with you. It was advisory. It was not anything like Ron hit the nail on the head. It was a kind of a semi-formal kind of a thing that everybody got on the same page and agreed to. Everybody signed off on it. All the mayors signed off on it, that kind of thing. But really, the teeth of it is TDOT because it's their road. And so what they've agreed to do is to enforce any standard that we put in place that's over and above theirs. And so on this one, because the county, through this PUD process, said no direct access on the Highway 109, TDOT will make them live up to that. And so the teeth, a lot of it is with TDOT and not necessarily with the county.
So that 2.75 parcel that was split off from Dollar General, their access would come from.
We'll go back to it. So their access, Highway 109 is over here, right? There is a frontage road that goes along. See, this is, like I said, this is exactly what you want to do along a state highway. You go to a lot of cities that have done it wrong over the years, and counties, where each has a direct access onto the state highway. It's a terrible way of doing things. It causes gridlock in no time. And so what we require with this development is you have an internal access road that services everybody, basically. And so the Dollar General, we require them to build it all the way to the property line. They follow us on that, but we require them to put it all the way to the property line. So that when the next person comes in and develops this, all they have to do is construct the rest of that roadway, and then they'll be able to go up here to Roberts Road, and the traffic will be able to come in and out. They're not directly accessing state highway 109.
Okay.
They'll do that.
Commissioner Miller.
Actually, it was okay. What's going in this 10,000 square foot building? Do we know
Yeah, I talked about that at length toward the beginning of the presentation. The proposed allowable uses remain unchanged from the approved PUD, and the proposed structure is a spec building that must comply with the PUD use table. Automotive services and repair was noted as proposed use on the PUD approval and was indicated as proposed by the applicant's director in the pre-app meeting. Other uses noted on the concept plan would also be allowed, construction sales and services and others. And so, provided whatever they're going to do complies with the uses on that approved use table, they can do it. Now, if they want to come in and do, you know, say they want to do a, be a good example, you know, I don't, let's say they want to put a buckets here, right, or something like that, or pilot wants to open a new station, won't work, it's not part of the approved plan. They want to put a munitions manufacturing facility there, or something like that, make hand grenades, that wouldn't work either, so that would have to go back to the county commission for a PUD amendment, and that use would have to be added to the table. But as long as they come through with a use that complies with what's on the master plan, they have the right to do it.
But they haven't given any indication of what
Yes.
type of business or they have?
Yes, as automotive services and repair was noted as proposed use on the approval and was indicated as proposed by the applicant's director in the pre-app meeting. So I'd say that's probably the likely use. However, they have the right and the option to do other uses as well.
Just don't want to get into a situation that we had previously with the same person, using it for things that weren't allowed,
Okay.
so I listen to my constituents because I'm an elected official and that's what I do. And I've heard Mr. Eaton's come up here over and over and over and over and talk about flooding. We all saw what happened all over the county just a few days ago with the massive water that we had. And I'm very concerned about literally someone being on well water and not having access to clean water. That's a big deal to me. So as a representative of, the people of Sumner County, I have issues with this. And I mean, is this the same thing that's been brought over and over? I'm just.
No, ma'am. This is, I believe this is the first time that this particular property has been looked at a couple of different ways in the past, but this is the first time that they've chosen to exercise the right that they have with the approved plan on file, the vested property right that they have. This is the first time that they've came to the planning commission to try to exercise that with a site plan.
And I know we talked about the 109 MS. I remember when all that first came out, I've been paying attention for a lot of years, lived here my whole life. And I'm pretty sure that when they were talking about doing the 109 bypass, I guess they were trying to make it look prettier than it is, that it was going to be a bypass for truckers to go around Nashville. And there were not going to be a lot of red lights, so there was no stop and go for trucks. It wasn't going to be a corridor for a lot of commercial use. And then here we are, right smack dab in residential. I was not on this commission when Dollar General went in. I would have voted no on that. But there's nothing I can do about that. I would not have voted to make this more commercial and flood the residents out. I mean, it's a big deal. Like, when do we stop? Like, at what point did people stop listening to what the people had to say? Like, they're flooding out my cows. They're flooding, I mean, this is things that we hear over and over and over. They breaking up people's farms, flooding out their animals, making it where they don't have clean drinking water. Like, at some point, we're going to have to fix what was broken before us. And I don't know really what the answer is, but I'm listening, Mr. Eaton. I just want you to know that.
One thing, what you have to do is you have to look at, and this is just advisory, but I think to fix it, of course, capital projects and that kind of thing can go a long way. This county commission has done, frankly, more in that regard. Like the Hollows is a good example of some project you guys have funded that have been done a long time. But what you have to look at, and I'm waiting for legal territory just a little bit here, is, you have to look at new things that come the right to deny rezonings and use changes and that kind of thing. There are certain things that have rights to be developed and to exercise the rights to do things that they're entitled to do upon the approved plans, and this is one of them. And so I don't know that the planning commission can go back in time and take away rights from people that they have accrued. But that said, new things that come through, rezonings, plan amendments that y'all have given negative recommendations on, you have the right to do those things, certainly. But when somebody is seeking to exercise a constitutional property right that they have to utilize the property as approved, it's the cow's out of the barn on that, I believe. And they demonstrated upon the plans that the drainage is addressed. There are some significant downstream issues that have been exacerbated. Sent an email about that today to you guys. There's some issues downstream related to some site improvements that have been made that are not the impact that are not caused by this particular project. It's actually, and so it's difficult to turn back the clock and take it away from people that have been accrued as property rights. But going forward, you guys certainly have the right to take a really hard dim view of things that come through and put them through the ringer.
Hang on. Go ahead. Oh, sure.
No,
Go.
Couple of questions, Josh. First, for my clarification, in the packet that you sent out, you had stated that the septic permit had not been received yet. Has that in fact been received now?
I'd have to defer to the applicant's representative to see if they obtain that septic permit at this time. I don't know. I do know that it's been applied for. They didn't get a copy of the application.
Okay. Secondly, along the same lines, where is it? There was something else that had been applied for. The water availability letter from White House. Has that been received?
I'd have to defer to them as well on that. Water is absolutely available at this location. There's a letter we have on file previously, and that's the reason that we didn't demand the water letter from White House Utilities, is because we already have them on file for this property. It's just a little bit old.
Okay. Concerning the traffic study, I don't disagree with Mr. Straw's earlier comments in that a lot has changed. The traffic study was estimated project completion in 2022. So we're now 2 years, 2.5 years beyond that point. But I do have some specific questions about the traffic study, if there's anybody here that can possibly address it.
I can do my best, but the 615 design group was not involved in the project where the traffic study was done, so I don't know how they can speak to
Maybe,
it.
okay, I guess I'll just ask the questions and we'll see
I think you
where it goes. Traffic study mentioned that the counts were done on a typical weekday, but I didn't see anything in the study that said how many days were actually involved in the study, period. Whether it was just one weekday, whether it was, you took the count for 2 or 3 weeks, and then did an average, or how it was in.
I'm not sure the answer to that.
Counts typically done for a 124-hour period.
I'm sorry?
You typically do counts for a 124-hour period.
Okay.
Yes.
The date at the top, 29 July 2020.
Okay. The COVID adjustments, and I appreciate that they did this. However, I can't follow the math on it. And maybe I'm just looking at it wrong, but I come up with different percentages than what they have in their adjustment factor calculation table included in the traffic study. So they're not way off, but a little off now. If you project it 2 or 3 years, can account for So that concerns me. It also mentioned that it used traffic numbers from station 267. And it never, at least I didn't see anywhere in the study where it designated where station 267 is located.
I don't know the answer to that right now, but I can look into it.
Okay. Because, you know, it mentioned, the study mentioned that it had used that station because they didn't have numbers, I guess, applicable to West Roberts Road.
So Station 267, there's 2 count stations in proximity to this project. TDOT maintains a network of, I forget the numbration of it, 10,000 count stations across the state that they do every single year. And so there's one up there around Boyle Springs Road. There's a count station there, and there's, I can't remember where the other one is, it's a little bit to the south, down towards Scott Park. And so it was one of those 2 sites. So that traffic study has been reviewed and approved already. And so it was reviewed and approved years ago. And so that's not necessarily something that is to be reapproved or anything at this point. The traffic study looked at one of those 2 counts, I guess, for comparable numbers from TDOT. Again, that traffic study has already been reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission previously.
Okay. I saw where it mentioned in the traffic study that the left turn lane going north on 109 exists, so that helps the situation, but I didn't see anything in the study concerning the addition of a right turn lane going south, where if trucks have to slow down and turn on West Roberts Road, then, you know, whether or not they're creating a situation for the traffic by not having a turning lane there. Don't know that anybody can answer as to why that wasn't looked at, why it wasn't included. I didn't see it anywhere in there that it was included. Regarding the stormwater, well, let me back up, let me hit before I hit on that. The landscape buffer that's proposed, plan sheet L1, the layout there doesn't agree with the detail. The layout, you know, that one didn't show up there, shows all the trees equally spaced, but if you look over to the right at the detail, the spacing of the trees is different. So trees are going to be offset and not lined up with each other, so that what's represented on this drawing is an accurate depiction of what that buffer is going to look like on a drawing. Not that it's going to look like that in real life ever. But that's my segue into the fact that, and I mentioned this when the 2 3/4 acre parcel came before us several months ago. The existing landscape on the existing site is pathetic. And I realize that the Dollar General property isn't owned by Mr. Head anymore, but apparently either nobody checked when it was installed, or if it was installed, nobody has maintained it the way they should, because it really is, it's pathetic looking. What I would like to see, if this goes in, is a berm with this buffer. And I actually presented this, and I provided Josh with some pictures that I emailed him earlier, is a 6-foot high berm with trees on it, so that the neighbors can't see much of a building there. If they're going to have to put up with this, you know, to at least buffer it, do a good buffer with the neighbors around it, because, you know, I think what's proposed there, especially if it's maintained with what existing is there, I mean, you may as well not put in anything. It's really, it's sad. It's sad. But, and Josh, can you show the pictures I sent you on.
Yes, sir.
By the way, there's no H in John,
Well, sorry.
just a side note. Yeah, we'll get to those in a second. Yeah, back up. So this is the buffer that's behind Kroger Marketplace. I brought this up several months ago too. This is a 6-foot-high berm with vegetation on it, and I also included a clip in a PDF. And Josh, I don't know whether you have this available or not, but it gave the description. We just lose microphones. It gave. I'll speak loud. It gave a description of the vegetation that was installed, you know, and this, once again, is behind Kroger Marketplace on Gallatin Road. There are homes behind this, and you can't see them. Well, that's the way it should be, in my opinion. You know, if something like this is going to go in, you know, we need to be, at least I feel like I need to make it as beautified, or do the beautification as much as possible to, you know, at least buffer the neighbors, you know, from having to look at what's going to be on the site, because this is in a residential area. So the landscaping, you know, once again, if this goes through, I'd like to amend the landscaping to require a 6-foot-high berm with vegetation that was assigned for the Kroger Marketplace to look like this in the next few years, and is maintained. And once again, if what is existing is an example of the maintenance that's going to be done, then, you know, I'm not satisfied at all, period. I mean, it is just a shamble of what's existing there. If we move on to the stormwater, and I sent Josh some pictures on this, I went out there on Saturday during our rainstorm, and this is standing on West Robert Road, looking towards the east generally, and looking at the property, looking at the front yard, and the runoff that's occurred. I've got a string of pictures here showing this. My concern, just like some of the other members of this commission have already expressed, is, and it's my understanding that maybe the homes were not there when Dollar General was put in, but I think we have a responsibility to see that, you know, the runoff that's coming off of this property isn't going to inundate the properties on the lower side. And I know the calculations were done, and I see the chart in the drawings was done. However, if you convert those quantities, I think the 10-year on the front pond, detention pond on the property, the 10-year flood estimated 5.75 cubic feet per second. That equates to 2,600 gallons per minute flowing. And I realize that that's almost half of what's there now, but I can't imagine 2,600 gallons a minute flowing down off of that property, you know. And another thing that concerns me is I didn't see anything in the plan that concerned, and once again, maybe on paper it's been met in the calculations, is reducing the velocity of that 2,600 gallons per minute. I mean, and once again, that's just the 10-year. You could look at the 25-year, and, you know, it's another 25% greater than that. So I have some real concerns, you know, about this, especially with, as the resident mentioned, you know, the residents using well water. And I understand, you know, the property by right and everything, but once again, if this is going to go in, I don't want my name on an approval that 3 years from now there's a mess up there that was created because either calculations were off, traffic estimates were off, anything of that nature. And there are a lot of things in this traffic study and what's been presented that concern me. So that's my 2 cents worth, or I guess it's 8 cents now because it costs 4 cents to make a penny.
Any other, I guess we don't. Any other questions, statements by any of the planning commissioners? Yeah.
It seems a little bit unpopular at the moment to plan, but I want to point out a couple of things. One, rights are there. Kind of bringing it back to the basics. We're a little back and forth. Sometimes we agree with rights when it's Airbnbs. We don't agree with rights when it's shipping containers. So we got some of that to work out. They're meeting all the requirements. If we disagree with the requirements, maybe that's something we need to look at as a commission. 109, what it is, what it was, what it was supposed to be, again, maybe something we'll look at in the future. I'm not exactly sure how we can hold this particular project accountable for all the things I just kind of listed. Again, maybe an unpopular thing amongst my fellow commission members, but I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve based on all the mentioned criteria.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. I did want to note that I think the addition of the berm that Mr. Belcher referenced, I mean, that's a feature of the landscape buffer. I don't think that's an unreasonable condition if the planning commission wanted to impose that on this. But I would caveat that there's a 5-acre buffer between this and the nearest residential property, so it is already there. So there is a several 100-foot wide buffer that is in place at this time. And those berms and that kind of thing can have great impact and that sort of stuff. But if you guys wanted to add that as a reasonable condition for the landscape buffer, it's not outside the spirit of what's required, what our landscape requirements require to happen anyway.
Josh, if I may, you said that the buffer could impact the stormwater if the ponds are doing, the detention ponds are doing what they're supposed to. It shouldn't impact it at all.
Right, but if you take and put a landscape buffer, or take and put a berm all the way across the entire property, then you'll have water backing up in the road. Water has got to be able to follow the natural drain across here, and likewise follow the natural drain to the rear of this one as well. But if you wanted to see a berm or something like that up here along the bottom side of the building, that's not an unreasonable condition to add. That's not something that I think is on the table of something. But again, you can't make it from end to end, because then you make it so the detention pond can't function. There's a lot of water that came down this property 20 years ago that still comes down today. And so the natural flow of water has got to be accommodated. This pond's job is to make sure that it's less than after construction than it is today. And so that's what it's designed to do. But something to shield the building from view of the folks over there to the west, that's totally a reasonable thing to add.
If I may, also, what about the velocity of the water that's coming off of the property?
I think the plans under review at this time, I believe we're looking at baby baskets and that kind of thing as alternatives to be added. We are professional staff that do this stuff a lot, so I mean, that's one of the things we've discussed. I think the stormwater manager sent some comments over, particularly on this pond, I think. But there were some comments as far as adding baby baskets at the discharge, adding spreaders, level spreaders.
Yeah, level protection.
Right, that basically takes the water as it comes out of the pond. You know what they do, they slow the water down and spread it out. Those Gabion baskets are the only thing in my view that really work, and so that's something we can absolutely require, that they do part of our stormwater regulations, and plan on requiring it. So,
That's a new term for me. What's a Gabion basket?
so it's like a metal basket that can be shaped however you want to shape it. A lot of times it's in like a hoop around the pond as the pond discharges. It's full of rocks. And so that pond will discharge into the gated baskets. And the gated basket with full of rocks takes that water and slows it down, functions as almost like a little mini pond, right? And so that little mini pond fills up and water kind of spills over the top relatively gently. And it gets spread out and it goes in different, it kind of sheet flows out away from the pipe. Without the gated baskets, in some situations, what you'll have is you'll have a scouring, basically where the pond is discharging like a hose. Like imagine you just turn a fire hose on something and it'll cut a ditch basically and it'll cause a lot of erosion. Those gated baskets are a solution that we use at Somerset Downs when we got developed to fix a lot of the problems that they had in that development. That were extremely effective around some of these ponds because the ponds were discharging just like this onto an adjacent property. Again, the adjacent property is owned by the same guy in this situation. But the requirement of the gated baskets to be installed at the outlets, I think is something, as long as Marshall and Joe admitted that I don't see an issue, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't require that, to be honest with you. It was a new term to me when I started with the county too, but you learn.
Point of order, Mr. Sittler, we have a motion, but we have no second. What is the Robert's Rules of Orders and the discussion we just had without a second? Is that proper or is that improper?
It was agended, so I don't see an issue with that, but as far as the motion, it would die for lack of a second.
Okay, but the discussion we had waiting for a second or no second is appropriate in Robert's Rules of Order.
You generally would want to open it up for discussion, but since it's an agenda item, I think you're okay.
Okay. As long as we're discussing, I want to verify that my understanding is correct. Those ponds are going to cut the volume in half. But because of the roofing and the parking lot, there will be more water, ultimately.
Right, and that's an inevitability.
Yes.
That's an inevitability. And so there's every site that's ever been developed in the history of development. When you build something on it, it has more post-construction runoff that leaves the site as a result of that.
Sure.
But the job of the engineer is to design the site in a way that ensures that I had the phrase in our regulations, but basically the job of the engineer is to ensure that at any given time, basically the cubic feet per second leaving the site after construction is less than or equal to what it was before. And it's also to ensure, to Mr. Belcher's very, very valid concern related to velocity and that kind of thing, is to ensure that there's no downstream damage. Because it doesn't do any good to have less water if the water that's coming out is so focused that it's destroying everything in its path. And so their obligation is to reduce the amount of storm water per cubic feet per second during those intervals, and to ensure that it's not tearing stuff up downstream.
Right. So John, you were talking about 2,600 gallons
A minute.
a minute. So currently it's about 5,000 gallons a minute coming off that property?
I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but basically if you go to the chart, right, the charts on these ponds, let's look at that front one. So this is the pond at the front. So during the 2-year event, it's 4.88 pre-development and 2.16 post. You can go up to the 100-year event, it's 14, and then it's 7. So you're having significantly less stormwater runoff as a result of these ponds being there.
About that.
And it's a good thing that it's not a state designated stream. So what we're able to do on this, if this was a stream, a TX stream, you wouldn't be able to put this pond in line with it. But basically the way that this pond, I might have to defer to Marshall to make sure I'm not saying something wrong here, but this pond being where it is, it sits right in the middle of the natural drain, which is all you used to be able to do detention a long time ago on streams and that kind of stuff. You TDEC outlawed inline detention is what they call it a long time ago, so you can't really do that anymore. But this isn't a stream, it's just a natural drain where everything congregates. So having a detention pond at this location should probably help, actually.
Yeah. But the other thing that I was thinking, in knowing that, still speaking about the water, is if we have an auto repair, oil leaks, you know, those kinds of things, what are the guarantees that the well water wouldn't be contaminated? I mean, I know depth and filtration through natural earth is a matter of fact, but
Well, and this is something you can't speak to, from 6.5 down here, but these, as I mentioned, this little barrier right here, what it's intended to do, what state law requires, say state law, TDEC requirements, that's actually federal law. But the state requirements based on federal law is, the first inch of runoff is typically the amount that's what typically carries your load, right? You know, on the asphalt parking lot. And so oil, grease, and that kind of stuff where people park will leave the site. The first inch is required to be treated before it discharges. And so my understanding on this is that this basket area right here is intended to capture that water as it comes into the pond, allow it to be cleaned essentially, and it kind of filters its way through, and then it makes its way to the outlet here. And so that, the calculations they show over here is how they, with the TSS removal, treatment of suspended solids removal, that they're required to show how they accomplish that. And again, this gets off into engineering territory that I can't translate, but that's what they're required to do. And so that's those calculations are provided with this application.
are there inspections of that filtration system periodically?
Right, they're required to be, so one of the things that we require them to give us is the stormwater maintenance and inspection agreement that I mentioned. They provided a draft to the county. We'll review that. Joe Phillips' office will review it and get it into compliance with our requirements. So what that is a deed restriction on the property that entitles the county to come in and inspect that whenever we want to periodically, and to require that they make fixes if there's problems. And so it's not being maintained properly. There we go. And so that's what we did actually on the Dollar General a while back. Their little filtration detention pond that they had behind it, they allowed it to get grown up, and they had to maintain it. And after some effort, Joe Phillips from my office, our stormwater manager, was able to find the right person at the Dollar General Corporation and have them go out there and clean up the pond. Basically, it looks worse than it is because it's that kind of a pond. They're not proposing that here, but that kind of pond has all this stuff planted in it and all these native grasses and all that. And so, but anyway, they had to get around the pond and clean it out, clean it up, and fix it. And so we're empowered to require that. If they don't do it, we're required to put there's fees and penalties they can accrue if they don't.
Do we measure hydrocarbons? Do we?
No, we don't get to the level of that kind of stuff, and that would not be a requirement that we could enforce, or that would be a legal requirement.
Does anybody get to that?
Not that I know of. No, not that I know of. Now, that said, if this was an auto mechanic shop, TDEC does require us to keep a list of what we designate as hot spots. And so if you've got somebody, let's say you had a dry cleaner, they're notorious for creating a lot of pollutants. Or auto shops, junkyards, those kinds of things. We have to keep an inventory of those and check them periodically. And so this is something that can be added to that list, that hotspot list, to make sure that everything is being done the way that it's supposed to. But we are required to check these things annually as part of our permit with TDEC.
Since we're still discussing.
Go ahead.
That reminded me of your comment, Josh, about the maintenance. The information in the packet says that a professional engineer has to inspect the ponds every 5 years. However, the owner is only mandated to keep records for 3 years. That's not a good combination, in my opinion. The record keeping should at least be as long as the PE evaluation. I think that needs to be changed so that they're in agreement. Also, David, on your point with the oil's lighter than water, and I understand, I don't disagree with Josh's statement that normally the first inch of rain, will wash all of that off, but it rises when it's in water, so, I don't know the effectiveness of the pond capturing and keeping any oil deposits. That's not my area of expertise by any means, but I do know oil is lighter than water.
Right. And with the parking structure in the city of Gallatin that we just built, we'll be building the storm drain, we have filtration banks. I think that's a much more dependable system. I'm not getting warm and fuzzy about this. I'm confident that the detention ponds will slow down the velocity. I think that would be a good thing for the neighbors downstream. As far as the pollutants, I'm not so sure. And of course, that's above my pay grade. I'm not. That's Marshall Boyd.
Yeah, what I'd have to say is that what they proposed here appears to satisfy state, county, and federal water quality requirements for treatment of runoff.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion points? We have a motion and no second. Going once, going twice. Motion fails for lack of a second. Do we have another motion?
Help me out here, Josh. And I understand that this development started X number of years ago, but based on the fact that the completion was stated to be done in 2022 for the site, I would like to see an updated traffic study. I don't know that, by rule we can require it, but it seems to me if they didn't meet their own schedule, that opens the door for it. I'd like to see an updated traffic study. I'd also, with regard to the berm, I'd like to see that on the drawings as opposed to just verbally discussing it, to where we have something that we can look at and approve as opposed to verbal discussion. And I don't know where that takes us, but those two items, once again, the stormwater concerns me. I think there is a strong possibility that this could help the runoff situation. We didn't see the other pictures that I had taken showing further to the west, but there was ponding water 2 or 3 yards down. But like I said, I don't know with this in the stage that it is and approval's already been given in the years past, whether we can require that or not. I don't know whether you have a comment.
Well, for the berm, I think, I think that's a reasonable requirement. Again, like I said, given you got it with the caveat that there is a 5-acre residential lot, that is a buffer here.
Yeah.
That's owned by the same person. Right. So
once again, nothing on it now.
Yeah. Right. But anybody that buys it would be buying it following this item. But point taken. So that could be a reasonable condition to impose. The traffic study, having an updated traffic study. I mean, if the Planning Commission wants to say we want a traffic study, approve this contingent upon an updated traffic study being provided, that's okay. Honestly, I would be very surprised. I'm no traffic engineer. I'd be surprised if there were additional items that would be warranted. But you never know. But But the question really would be though, if this is a litigious situation, can we require, if we get the traffic study back, can we require this entitled project to then do it? Wherever, if there were additional improvements that need to be made and that kind of stuff, could we tell this entitled and approved, project that they have to install those or we're not gonna issue permits or whatever? And so that might be something that only a judge can answer, I don't know. We get to the legal territory relatively quickly, but requiring study, as a condition of approval or getting them to update the study, so we at least know it. And having traffic studies on hand is one of the things that we like to have on file in the office, because if somebody comes from something nearby, we have a lot of data that tells us what's been happening and what's going on and that kind of stuff. And so we're not a bad thing to have, but I don't know whether you could deny a project based on that, or that the staff could make them go in and put in, you know, if a new lane all the way to Portland needed to be put in, I don't know that we could require that. You know, that's an exaggeration, obviously, but what that would drive at is what degree of financial improvements over and above what's already been required could be required.
Mr. Chairman? Sir. I'd like to make a request to deny the site plan as presented with no further explanation.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'm a lawyer, but I would strongly advise you guys to put your reasons for the denial on the record.
Do we need more time, or do we have a second? And I will call it for a second. We'll have a second.
So I know that we have the 90 days. I mean, we're in a stalemate. We got to do something. Can we defer this for another month, or is that going to keep us in that 90-day window?
It could absolutely be deferred if you guys wanted to defer it. I mean, I think what I advise is having something actionable for the applicant as far as something that you want him to do to come back with.
Well, I know that Mr. Belcher had a couple questions questions about some permits that he asked about, and then would they be willing to do the burn that he, those, I think was it 2 items that you were asking about that they didn't have answers for?
Yeah, it was,
Septic
the
and.
septic and the water availability.
Okay, so I'll just make a motion to defer and to get the answers for those 3 questions, and then we can revisit this next time, just to keep us moving.
We have a motion to second.
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Holmes. Do roll call, please.
Commissioner Holmes?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller? Yes. Mr. Bissell?
No.
Mr. Belcher?
Yes.
Mr. Strong?
No.
Motion passes to defer for 30 days based on answers to the questions. Is
So we were wanting them to look at septic permit. It's a very reasonable, take a look at the burn at that. And what was the other thing I called it?
Permits.
Water availability. Sure, understood?
okay. Thank you. Thank you. Item 2, Josh.
Sir. It goes in. Next item on the agenda, Mr. Chairman, is Pressure Station PUD Phase 4 preliminary plat. This is something the Planning Commission will be familiar with. It was before this body, January 2024, so last month. The preliminary plat depicts 58 residential building lots and several lots of common open space. This stage has about, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Would it be if we just didn't use the microphone? It's
It's
easier to understand without it.
So this piece of property has 29.6 acres located along Jenkins Lane. This property was rezoned and approved by Sumner County Commission in 2007. The project representative is Dewey Engineering. The developer is Pressure Station Midwest LLC, Michael Matelli. He's here this evening, I believe. The utilities are provided by White House Utilities. We discussed it at length last month. When this project was originally approved, there was a per lot fee contribution that was required. The pattern book that we have on file, the current approved pattern book was set at $855 per lot. That'll be used for transportation improvements at the county's discretion. This phase of the development, staff has looked at it and determined that it fully complies with the approved development plan for the Pressure Station planning and development and appears to be vested in accordance with the Tennessee Vested Property Rights Act of 2014. Again, this was deferred last month. This is the subject property. You see Jenkins Lane down here. This is phase 1 of the project, existing development as it were here. And then there's a strip of property here that is owned by the developer that serves the rest of the property. They're proposing to develop phase 4, which is the area to the north. Parcel here, connecting up to the Creekside development to the north and Long Haul Pike. So a little background on this one. This planning and development's preliminary master development plan was what it's called under the zoning at the time, and rezoning request was approved in November of 2007. They approved a final master development plan in 2008. That was during the Great Recession, as we all remember, and the plan sat on it for a while and was brought back and renewed by the Sumner County Regional Planning Commission in April of 2013. So it's kind of like a new plan, new vest, basically, at that point. The preliminary plat for phase 1 was approved by the Planning Commission April of 2013. Final plat was approved February of 2015. And it was recorded January of 2016. That final plat was. They subsequently built it, as I showed on the aerial. These are the homes. It's about 20 homes that are here in place at this time, within the Crusher Station development. There was a preliminary plat, that was approved about 2.5 years ago now, almost 3 years ago, for phases 2 and 3, approved by the Sumner County Regional Planning Commission, July 2022. That's this area down here. This phases 2 and 3. They will be submitting a phase 2 preliminary plat, which will be this, or sorry, final plat to you guys next month, which will be this portion here. That'll be coming in with 40 lots, I believe, or something like that, next month. Final plat, because the road is in and it's substantially complete at this time. Again, phases 2 and 3 are under construction, and that final plat will be turned in tomorrow. It'll be submitted electronically tomorrow, whenever the building reopens, we'll collect the fees and the hard copies from those folks for that final plat. So right now, though, we're talking about the phase 4 preliminary plat. Phase 1 of that document, which is the cover sheet. This is phase 2. As you can see, it's phase 4 is this portion up here. It's highlighted in gray. That connects down here is the bridge in place across this little creek, and it connects to phase 1, and also phases 2 and 3 here. So it'll have the reason that we require them to do it this way is to ensure that there's a second way in and out through this phase. So you have the one here across the bridge, and the other will connect to Creekside Development up here. So this forms a second connection to. It forms the first connection, I guess, north-south connection from Jenkins Lane up to Long Haul Pike. So that's something that was called for in our comprehensive plan, the 2035 plan, and so this accomplishes that goal as well. So it's something that we require them to stick to, because that, as you guys know, this area over here, as you may know, Big Station is prone to a lot of flooding, and this provides a means for folks to be able to get up to Long Haul Pike or back down. But yeah, that's the area that's proposed for development, and then the subsequent sheets just break it down. You see here on, I have this labeled as page 1, page 2. This is actually page 2 and page 3. This is an amenity center that's here on site, or that's proposed to be here on site for the residents. It's one of the amenities of the PUD. And this is on the other side. As far as specifics on this project, internal streets as proposed meet the standards contained in the Sumner County subdivision regulations and match previous construction along phases 1, 2, and 3. 50-foot right-of-way, 24-foot pavement width. All streets are proposed to be public with sidewalks along both sides of all internal roads. And as I mentioned, there is a per lot payment that will take in the lots in this phase of development, as well as phase 1 or the other phases. So at $850 a lot or $5 a lot. There was a traffic study submitted by the applicant in 2021 and revised in early 22 with submittal of the phase 2 and 3 preliminary plat. One recommendation contained in that traffic study was related to signal installation at Long Haul Pike and Upper Station Camp Creek Road that has subsequently been completed. And so that's a very significant improvement that was done in partnership with the county and TDOT. The county funded the design and some other early phases of the project, and TDOT took care of the construction. And the study that we have on file for this project indicates that no additional improvements are required, given that signal is now in place. And in the packet, I think emailed to you guys separately, the applicant's traffic engineer submitted a cover letter dated February 3rd, 2025, noting no additional improvements. And this is that letter from Gillian Fishbach, PE, that was included in the packet and in the presentation that was sent out. As far as utilities and fire protection, White House Utilities will service this development. Hydrants are indicated on the preliminary plat and will need to be installed and shown on the final plat as well. The spacing that they're showing shows all the hydrants within 500 feet of the hydrant. And that appears to be met. Actually, I think there's a 250-foot spacing on these hydrants, I think. But we see that a lot in the main developments. They try to match city standards, which are a little bit more rigorous for fire protection than the counties are. drainage, the applicant has submitted a comprehensive set of construction plans for this development. They are depicting on-site detention. There's a multi-phase erosion prevention and sediment control plan that's been included with the construction plan. With the final plat, we will be wanting any lots that back up to a drainage easement or that contain floodplain to be designated as critical lots so that we can confirm the elevations. And that would involve submittal of an individual critical lot plan to the county engineer. There aren't any lots in this phase that are shown as in the floodplain, and it is a mapped floodplain, so it's pretty accurate. However, that those maps are not perfect, and so the county engineer is authorized by the subdivision regulations to require housing to be built up if he feels it necessary to minimize flooding risk. The construction plans and drainage calculations are under review. The county engineer will be providing another set of comments to their engineer following approval of the plat. The plans as submitted appear to generally meet the county's requirements. They will have to get a final approval from the county engineer on the construction plans and stamp those plans. A stormwater maintenance and inspection agreement will be required. We have one on file for the overall development that was done with phases 2 and 3. So as far as the lots, these lots meet the minimum size requirement per the approved PUD. There are 54 side load lots that are a little bigger, station lots, and 4 that are front load village lots. And you see the minimum house size requirements that were included in that original approval there as well. Amenities, sidewalks are proposed to be installed along all frontage. With home construction, you can't do individual mailboxes anymore. And so I think with phase 1, they have individual mailboxes, but going forward, they'll all be kiosks. There's a clubhouse amenity area and open space F that's in this phase. The approved PUD documents state that the club pool and associated parking shall be fully constructed prior to the recording of the final plat for phase 4, which is this phase. A site plan for the clubhouse pool and associated parking shall be submitted to the Sumner County Regional Planning Commission prior to construction. And so what that means is they'll need to turn in a site plan for planning commission review. Depending on how big it is, it might be something that could be approved administratively. But that'll have to be done before this plat is recorded and they can sell lots. That site plan will have to be approved and it'll have to be built before we can sell lots. So the comprehensive plan calls for this in the suburban place type. Right over here, as you can see. Findings of fact, as you guys know, for plats, we're required to adopt findings of fact. As we discussed last month, this appears to comply with all of our zoning and subdivision regulations and doesn't contravene in the purposes for zoning or benefit a small group of people to the detriment of the general public. And so our findings of fact appear to be met. Next steps, construction plans have to be approved by the county engineer, obtain any TDEC permits that they might need. They already have open TDEC permits for the phases that are under construction at this time. After construction plans are approved and TDEC issues the permits, we'll have a pre-con meeting with them. At the pre-con meeting, we'll have that will issue them a land disturbance permit after that meeting. And once we do that, they can start grading activities on this phase and installation of infrastructure. Of course, we inspect all that throughout the process, throughout the development process for roads and drainage. Once everything's installed to a point of substantial completion and approved by the county engineer, our department, and once that amenity center is complete, they can file final plats with this project review, along with any surety that we make for top coat and those kinds of things. So, Mr. Chairman, there's example motions on the screen. Example motion 1 is to find that the county's requirements are met to approve a preliminary plat for station phase 4, contingent upon A, approval of from the county engineer construction plans, B, construction of all the roadway and drainage infrastructure to substantial completion prior to submittal of the final plat, C, submittal of as-built drawings prior to the approval of the final plat, D, that stormwater maintenance inspection agreement. I think we have what we need on that, but it's in there anyway, in case we need additional detail for this state. E is, that site plan needs to be submitted and approved for the amenity center. It shall be completed prior to the recording of the phase 4 final plan. And F references that per lot payment that they're obligated to make as part of the regulating pattern. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation. Mr. Michael Natelli is in attendance to speak on this item, and he signed up to speak as well. He's the only person who signed up.
We can do that now.
Good evening. My name is Michael Natelli with Natelli Communities, and we're the developer of the remainder of Crutcher Station, comprising phases 2 through 6. As Josh had mentioned, phase 4 was undertaken by a different developer many years ago. Joining me this evening, I also have Michael Dewey, engineer of record, and Jim Murphy with Bradley Aaron representing us as well. And so depending on the nature of any questions that are asked, hopefully among the three of us we can answer whatever questions you have. We did provide that letter that Josh had referenced from the traffic impact statement author, Gillian Fishback. Her evening schedule is such with her kids, as we all know, makes her unable to attend, and so we did ask for questions in advance. We didn't see any come in about the traffic study, so I'm hoping that whatever questions had been asked, that those have been addressed and answered to your satisfaction. But with that, we're available for trying to answer whatever questions the Commission has.
Do we have any questions?
Are there any other speakers?
No, he's the only one.
Well, I signed for 3 of us. I didn't actually put their names down until they got here, but
That's okay, we understand.
good.
Thank you.
Okay. Is this working? I'll speak fast. The development that this is connected to, I believe it's Creekside. Do you know how many homes are in Creekside?
I don't know.
I actually did have questions on the traffic study, and I appreciate the fact that Ms. Fishbach has a family and has small kids. However, I felt, right or wrong, that I didn't want to start a precedent where we allow questions to be transferred back and forth via email, because this is the public meeting. We're supposed to be transparent to the public and have everything answered and aired out here. So I intentionally did not forward any questions for that reason.
Okay.
But I do have questions.
I appreciate you letting me know. It might have been helpful to know that position before tonight, if for the next time, if this is the same situation.
No, well, once again, that's my feeling, my opinion on this.
No, I understand completely.
You know, the purpose of having these meetings
Sure.
every month is
Understood.
Public. I noticed in the traffic study that it did not include 2 intersections. One slightly west of the main entrance to Crutcher Station, where Anderson Lane, Jenkins, and Longview come together. I was curious, and once again, you probably can't answer this question, why that intersection wasn't included. Yeah, because I forwarded Josh some pictures, if you want to. This is from Google Earth. It's somewhat of a awkward intersection. There we go. This is a view on Anderson Lane looking north at the intersection. To the left, there's a stop sign on Longview to the right, it becomes Jenkins Lane, and we all know if we've been in Tennessee any length of time, no street can just have one name, it's got to have several names. So, but these are views of that. It appears that Anderson Road, excuse me, I said Anderson Lane, it's actually Anderson Road, was probably there first, and Longview, which this is a shot looking, go back to that one, Josh, if you would. This is looking west, where the road becomes, Jenkins becomes Longview. There's a stop sign for traffic coming towards me there. There's not a stop sign there at the curve. And I used to travel this route morning and evening going to and from work. And it was always awkward, always a problem, especially in the evening coming home from work on Anderson Road, wanting to turn and go west on Longview, because you can't see around that curve very well. I think it's a bad absence that this intersection wasn't included in the traffic study. If you follow Longview continuing west, it connects to Long Hollow Pike. That intersection wasn't included in this traffic study either. The way I see it, people leaving Crutcher Station, if they want to go to Long Hollow Pike, they're going to turn right onto Jenkins going west and turns into Longview to go to Long Hollow Pike. That intersection is awful in the evenings, where if you're on Longview and you approach Long Hollow Pike and you're wanting to turn left or headed towards Goodlettsville, you're sitting there for several minutes before you have a chance to turn left. So I wanted to bring that up. I also wanted to bring up the fact that even though the study was updated, it did not include the opening of Liberty Creek High School, Liberty Creek Middle School, and Liberty Creek Elementary School, which also uses, I always get these mixed up, upper station, lower station, like I said, I always get them mixed up, lower station with traffic coming off of that road onto Long Hollow Pike. It's good that they put a traffic signal in there, but
That's upper.
which,
What you're talking about is upper now.
okay.
Yes.
That traffic light was put in because of the schools. I don't think it was put in because of Creekside. Maybe it was both, but my understanding was that it was put in because of the schools being there.
If I could,
Yes, please.
the point of clarification on that, it was already warranted before the schools ever went in.
Okay.
And so we actually reached out, I say we, the county, it was maybe a year before I started here in 2018. The county reached out to TDOT to see if they would look at that intersection for us, to see if, that's before we had a county engineer or anything like that, to see if it was warranted there. And they came back in 2017, 2018, and noted that it was warranted at that time. And with the school traffic on top of it, it was going to be really warranted at that point. And so TDOT, as I mentioned, was good enough to partner with the county. They didn't have to do what they did, but they did, and they assisted the county with getting that traffic signal put in prior to the school opening.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Josh. In the traffic study, Table 3 notes that the Long Hollow Pike, Upper Station, and Brixton coming out of Creekside had a level of service of D in it. So that's where you start being concerned about what the traffic is. And that was in the traffic study. That's not since then. That was, during the current term of the traffic study being done. Also, on page 18 of the traffic study, a 25% increase was included, although it didn't stipulate, I don't think, exactly over the number of years that was done. I took it as being 6 years based on the information in the traffic study, which works out to be a Actually, if you use exponential equation on that, which is proper in this case, it works out to a 3.8% increase per year. Gallatin, between year 2020 and 2023, population increased 13.3%. White House increased 17.9%. Shackle Island increased 12.5%. All of those percentages, when you break it down on an average basis, is higher than what was used in the traffic study for increase based on where we are today. Because once again, you know, this original development started back in 2007, and here we are in 2025. Also on page 18, there was a statement that 50% of the traffic flow was reassigned to a different travel lane, but it didn't stipulate why that was done. At least I couldn't find it in the traffic study. Maybe it's there and I missed it, but I couldn't find it. Figure 5B in the traffic study, which talks about the flow of traffic for the intersections that were looked at. Once again, I can't follow the logic because it has, you know, 5 cars going through one intersection, and then where your secondary access to off of Jenkins Lane is located, then it only has 4 cars. Maybe you're accounting for 1 car pulling into a household on that, but the numbers didn't mesh with me as to where if you add them up as you proceed to Lower Station, where the creek is, Lower Station, it didn't sum up. So I'm confused over that. Maybe it's something that I missed. Also, and Josh, maybe you can answer this question. Do you know what school Creekside and Crutcher Station are zoned to?
I'm reasonably sure that they would be zoned for, no, I don't know. I can look, we can check. I think it's there.
Station, yeah.
Is it Station?
Station.
Okay.
I'm 90% sure.
I would guess that. It was just, so I'm trying to think of where all this traffic is going to be going at these different times. And once
That's
again,
correct. I looked it up.
okay. Let's see, I already mentioned the level of service D.
And it's important to remember to take note that at Brixton Boulevard there where it was level service details because there was no trailer still there. And so it was impossible, virtually impossible to make that turn out of that place most of the day. And same thing on the other side of the railroad station camp. But the folks on Brixton Boulevard coming out of Creekside, that's their only way in and out of that subdivision. It does not have another alternate access.
Yeah.
And so that was a significant issue. So that's been greatly helped with the signal.
Yeah. Maybe let me segue to some questions maybe that can be answered on the stormwater. I noticed in the.
Can I
Oh, I'm sorry.
apologize.
Go ahead.
You've asked a lot of questions. I can't remember them all. This is a challenge because you've gone through many, many questions. So I'm trying to remember some of them to try to respond to some of them. And so my understanding about when traffic studies are undertaken, a scope is defined, and generally it's with whomever is reviewing it to make sure that the scope and the area intersections are included. I'm assuming all of that was done. This predates my involvement with the project. So that's, I'm not sure if that's responsive to one of the things you raised, but that struck me as an observation as you were going through some of those items.
Yeah.
Some of the other items you mentioned were, I gather, some of what you considered, and maybe everybody considers, I don't know the road network well enough, but some existing roads that are problematic. You said Anderson intersection, so forth.
Yes.
And How long have they been that way?
To my knowledge, I'm sorry, to my knowledge, it's been there longer than Crutcher Station has been there. So I know the Anderson Lane, Longview, Jenkins malfunction there existed before Crutcher Station existed. So that makes me doubly curious as to why it was left out of the study, especially when it's probably not even a half a mile from the Crutcher Station main entrance.
I'm not sure either. Has the highway department addressed it? Again, I'm coming in sort of after the fact, but I'm trying to understand.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say forever it's existed, but you said predated, the problem predated the Crutcher Station development.
Yeah.
So it's been known about.
Yeah, and once again, the intersection of Longview and Long Hollow predated that. And once again, just to clarify,
Yeah.
traffic leaving Crutcher Station on Jenkins, if you want to get to Long Hollow Pike, you're going to go that direction. You're not going to go towards Lower Station, to access it that way. You're going to go the other way, especially with the Lower Station having a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit.
Well, as a generalization, my understanding of the traffic impact study and Gillian Fishback's, who was a traffic engineer, her recommendation and observation was that no road improvements were required based on the traffic counts that would be generated from Crutcher Station residents. So,
Yeah, well, once again, I appreciate her with the family situation not being here. That's one reason, in my opinion, the people that can answer the question ought to be at these meetings in a public setting, so that answers can be asked and questions can be asked and answers can be given.
okay.
So, I don't know, where that takes us on the traffic study, other than the fact that, like I said, it did not include two intersections that I would have expected should have been included. So,
I'm not sure, I wasn't involved in the scoping, and as I said, generally, when a traffic study is done, the scope is co-determined by the traffic engineer and whomever they're presenting it to, in this case, the county, Sumner County, but that's
and
typically
that's,
so.
one of the problems I see with this development stringing over what has been 13, 17, 18 years now, is that things certainly change in a year, really change in 18, but be that as it may, I have a couple of our question concerning the stormwater runoff. Is there somebody here that can address that by chance?
I play an engineer on TV, but I'd rather bring up a real engineer to address the questions.
Happy to help.
I noted in the stormwater information that it speaks about ponds 4 and 5 and bypassing basin 6. And I couldn't find anywhere on the drawings where basin 6 was located. I also noted that even though the amount of cubic feet per second coming out of ponds 4 and 5 is reduced, it's only slightly reduced. And I'm curious as to, whether or not, and I'll just say it, whether as many houses as possible have been packed in on this, and the pond was reduced in size so that it would obtain a better number than the existing, but just slightly. So
Yeah, I mean, it's designed to meet the stormwater requirements.
Yeah.
If that's your question.
Well, I understand that. I didn't understand where Basin 6 was. And there was a discussion in there about bypassing Basin 6 in reference to ponds 4 and 5, which are included in this phase 4.
Okay. I've got about 35 documents I'm trying to go through here. Which page are you on in the drainage report and calculations?
Gosh. Let me see if I can.
Which part was it you're looking for?
Ponds 4 and 5. There's a page that has a table that's background is blue.
Pond 4 is right here. This is
Yeah.
this is pond 4.
There's pond 4,
And
and
then
I know where pond 5 is at the
Pond
other
5.
end.
Pond 5 is here.
But where is Basin 6?
Basin 6 is pond 5.
Okay,
So there's multiple basins. They just happen to, basin doesn't necessarily represent pond.
yeah,
So I think that may be the
Like drainage
confusion.
basin, is that what you guys are referring to there?
Yeah, the drainage basin. So some of it may be a bypass basin, some of it may be going to a pond. So that's probably why that maybe the confusion.
okay. And it mentioned in there that there was gonna be a bypass from Basin 6. I'm trying to go back to my documents.
Yes,
I need to
that-
find.
Yeah, if you go to, for example, page, not sure if it's not showing page number, 80 of the drainage report, there's a map that'll show you what the drain areas are. And we've included, because not every square inch is going to go to a basin traditionally, or pond. And so what we do is we can over-detain those areas that'll be bypassing. And so that the cumulative effect is a reduction in stormwater runoff.
There it is. I believe, yes. This doesn't have a page number. The table heading is runoff release rate summary. And it talks about existing basin 6, and that says proposed to pond 4, proposed to pond 5, and it says pond 4 outflow, pond 5 outflow, proposed to bypass 6.
Yes.
So where is that water going if it's not going into pond 4 or pond 5?
Into the stream from the rear yards. That map will show, the map I'm referring to will show you where that's going. But you'll see on the bottom line is the overall flow reduction for the cumulative effect.
Yeah. So a 2-year flood event then is reduced by 0.32 cubic feet per second. 10 years reduced by 0.6 cubic feet per second. And jump all the way to 100 year, and it's also 0.6 cubic feet per second reduction.
Correct.
So pretty much the outflow is going to be pretty darn close to what it is right now on developed land.
Correct.
Do Josh, do we know of any flooding incidents in this area, pre-development?
Yeah, absolutely. Over, Creekside, the subdivision to the north is basically surrounded by floodplain. And Jenkins Lane is likewise floodable. This area right here it's in open space. There's some floodplain here as well. But over here, we're not aware of flooding. But there's, we don't hear about flooding most of the time whenever it's near somebody's house. So it's a developed piece of property.
All right, well, that's the litany of my questions. If somebody else wants to ask something. Commissioner Miller?
I don't really have a question. I think where we are is we get left with a big pile of things that we have to deal with. This is obviously how it's been, and it's been, almost 20 years since this was rezoned, correct, Josh?
Correct. In 2007.
Things have changed a lot since 2007. I know that these gentlemen just came in last year and probably invested a lot of money for a property that was zoned for them to do high-density residential. So I am sympathetic to that, but also this is my district and I represent my constituents. And I mean, just who's asking about the flooding? I mean, I literally took a screenshot on Saturday from Sumner County Highway Department. It says currently these are the roads that are closed, but not limited to. And I'm just going to name the roads that are in that area: Liberty Lane on Station Camp, Pepper Station Carrollton. And then I know that literally there was a big road closed sign where you can't get to your house, you can't get out of your house, you're trapped. It's definitely an issue. Once again, we have made changes going forward, but this is something that was approved before, and it puts us between a rock and a hard place. I appreciate everybody's hard work and the questions, and it's definitely an issue, and it's going to cause more issues. But this was obviously approved by a commission that never said no, and we have to deal with that. And I know we're working on a comprehensive plan, and we're doing everything we can do, but it's a tough place to be for you guys, because you have invested money, and it was zoned for what it's zoned for, and the decisions that we have to make representing our constituents that don't want this. So, I don't know where we go from here, but I do sympathize with both sides.
I have a question for Commissioner Holmes. Deborah, you live on the other side of Long Hollow Pike from this. I mean, well, Lower Station Camp Creek runs right through your backyard.
Back there where they're developing.
Did you by any chance get south on Lower Station Camp Creek Road?
It was closed. It was closed. It was closed early on and for an extended amount of time. The worst flooding for us and probably everybody was Sunday morning between probably midnight and 3 or 4, where it was super ugly, really hot. I don't know, it was dark, so I'm not sure if Long Hollow was closed, but I know all my front fields and I was on my face. So that's a lot, that's a lot of water. And so I couldn't get over there to tell you what that looked like, but I can tell you that it was substantial.
Well, it's the route to the schools, Jenkins to Lower Station Camp.
That's always closed.
Yeah.
I mean, it just is.
But I don't know that it's a life safety issue because of the way to get out on Longview. Up to Long Hollow, yeah.
Or, and I hate to say this, even through Creekside.
Yeah, or
If
even-
I'm being really honest, I don't want to be, but if I were being honest,
Yeah.
that would be.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because I just want to approach this honestly, obviously.
It doesn't connect right now, but it will.
Yeah, that's the point. That's the point of what that connection up there. Well, there actually, you know, there's a lot of disagreement on the quality of planning and that kind of thing. But it shows you that even back then, people were thinking about this because they did require that subdivision. When Creekside came through, it was one way in, one way out. There's no way that would be approved back in that configuration today.
Right.
There's about 300 lots that go in, one way in, one way out on a long pipe. There's no signal there, no nothing, right? So they didn't have the developer doing that. But what they did do, though, was to require this connection right here to the south. Because like I said, there was a goal that's been articulated for a long time here in Sumner County to get the north-south connection between Jenkins Lane and Long Pipe. And so they studied that out years ago with the express purpose of this property developing in the future. I think they actually came online around the same time. And so the goal there was to make sure that this subdivision connected to this subdivision. That way, life safety wise, these folks could get out if there's an issue along the pipe, they could find some way out. And on the other end, these folks could go up to Long Wall Pipe if they get to this road. And because this road right here, periodically will be closed, big station will have flooding issues and that kind of stuff. And so there was actually thought that went into that, being done the way that it's proposed.
So I think in summary, we have some considerations from Mr. Belcher. Oh, I'm sorry, Adam, you have questions?
No, I'm just good. Working. I don't think anybody is excited about this level of density. I think we're all there. Everybody agrees with that. I think we are where we are now, and we have to make a decision based upon everything that led up to this. I'm hoping that detention pond system that we talked about is adequate and will assist with any flooding in that area, improve even flooding in that area. Seeing that everything to this point is checked, the boxes have been checked, and the requirements that have been presented have been satisfied up to this point. I'm going to make a motion for approval of 1 through 1A through F.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Second by Mr. Stroll. I would just want to say that there are questions about and I don't know that the developer can do anything about it, but I think there are questions that needed to be asked about the traffic of Jenkins along on the western side. Seems to be a problem, and it's more of a problem that it wasn't addressed because so much has changed in the time that that traffic study was done. And I realize that the letter is there, but I don't know that I'm satisfied with the addressing of that letter, that it answered all my questions. But those are my comments after the motion and the second. Are there any other questions before we vote? Is that a yes, Commissioner Holmes?
I don't know, I don't want to.
You what? You don't want to vote? Wait, we're here. So, any questions? If not, we'll go ahead and do the roll call. Okay.
Commissioner Holmes?
Yes, but I don't want to say that, but I'm saying.
Commissioner Miller?
Yeah.
Mr. Issa?
Yeah.
Mr. Belcher?
Yes.
And Mr. Strong?
Yes.
4 to 1.
4 to 1, motion passes. Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, the next item we have on the agenda is administrative approval. We just had a few that were included in the packet. Glad to standards and short-term rental policy stuff, so I don't want to beat you guys on that again. But I did want to give just a quick update on the comp plan survey. We've been on channel 2, it's been talked about in the newspaper and, been shared by different folks around the community and that kind of thing. So we've been pleased so far. Our goal going into this was, we talked about being kind of pessimistic about getting any response and that kind of thing. Our goal is somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 responses is what we'd like to get. It's going to be open until March 14th. As of today, I think we're at 1,475 responses. And so it's done real well. We're able to track the data. So like anytime the sheriff shared it the other day and that caused a big spike, Channel 2's interview that they did about it, that caused a big spike. And so we just want to continue to have everybody that's interested share it. Anybody that has a stake in Sumner County, we want to hear from them. And so it is open to everybody that lives or works here. And maybe the goal is to get to 3,000. So we're thinking about some ways to talk to. I'm gonna reach out to Tennessee, and again, I included them on something a while back. I may see if they'd be willing to do an article about it and that kind of thing. And so hopefully we can continue to get people to participate. So we've been pleased so far, because normally you got to drag responses out of people, and so to have 1,400 when we're only about halfway through the survey period is very decent. So.
Well, we have 200,000 plus people in the county, and we should get a few more.
I think that's more people than vote in the county.
Well, that's true.
That's fair.
They filled out a survey.
Right,
Just get up there, register, vote, they're right about that.
But that's all I have. It closes middle of next month, and so once that closes, we'll do a presentation to you guys summarizing all the responses. But you see all the comments that everybody's written in. There's some good ones. I'm gonna tell you, there's some good ones. And it's,
I just wonder how many people.
everybody think it up your skin before you.
What'd you say, Chris?
I just wonder how many people that do not live in Sumner County have taken this.
Well, we did require them to say where they live, but people can lie. I mean, but it's one of the questions we ask people is, where do you live? In the cities and out the county. I don't live in Sumner County as an option. And so we do ask that, we can't make everybody be honest, we do our best.
Well, I just want to say, this, for 2 items, this was a tough one, and we all understand why. We are stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Is there a way for us to have a study session about how we can kind of prevent this from happening, like going forward for next commissions or whatever? Like something that was approved 20 years ago, there needs to be a smaller window.
Well,
You know what I mean? It's a
yeah.
statement.
And there is, when things have set dormant, and there are a couple of planning developments out there that have sat dormant that this body could probably take a look at.
Yeah.
Right, that haven't moved forward in a long time. This one though, it's been very incremental, but they let it lapse, and then they brought the whole plan back and got it renewed.
In 2013.
They turned in flats, and they've done little things here and there that never quite got to that point. And under the old zoning code, there was really not a clearly defined process to take an existing PUD and revoke it. It was like an optional thing where the planning commission may evaluate it, basically. Our current regulations, things that are approved under our current regulations, there's some shalls in there. And so if they haven't moved forward within specified amounts of time, those things can be brought back. And so the regulations that you guys have in the books now will go a long way toward that. But sometimes it's the political will to do it. You have to be willing to do that.
I just wasn't sure. I mean, I guess we haven't had that in place long enough to actually see the fruits of that.
Right.
Is the thing. And okay.
How many more high-density developments are there out there that we're gonna have to look at?
Define how it is.
A lot of those.
No, I know what you mean. I've been around long enough to know what y'all think is ISD. But this is probably realistically one of the last ones. There's a couple of other developments that are out there that are kind of similar that's never moved forward. Again, if y'all want to do a roundup of long-standing floods that have been out there for several years that haven't had any forward motion, I'll be glad to look at that for you, and we can look at it and see.
fine, I was just curious if you knew. Just leave that one alone, I was curious if you knew, if there's any, we're gonna be,
But
but this is a terrible place to be.
Crutcher Station is one of the last, like, big planning and developments that got approved. It had all kinds of issues that caused it to sit there for all those years. That didn't just sit there.
They don't
because-
even maintain their front entrance.
Right, well, the new developer is gonna have to. And so there's been a whole lot of things over the years with this thing, and we've been involved with the HOA, wasn't really one for the longest time, and so
But it's
anyway.
still under the builder, that's
It's,
the problem.
right, and once NVR, these folks came back in, that became a lot more clear who the HOA was, but anyway, this thing had a ton of issues that I never fully understood, but it sat like it did for so long because there were all these issues that were behind the scenes with the contractual issues and stuff like that. But it's probably one of the last ones that are what you call a big development, 100 lots plus or 75 lots plus, with smaller lots that got rezoned that had to move forward. Very well.
If another one comes up, we're gonna yell at you.
Well, I just offered to provide a list, and you said you didn't want to do it.
I would like to see that
Make a
list if
motion
it's
to
not too
adjourn.
much work. If it's not too much work, I would like to see.
It's not that, there's not that many of them. There's not that many. And so,
Define one of the last ones.
Yes, definitely. Motion to adjourn.
10, 5,
less than 5.
20, less than 5, okay.
Okay, well, then I would ask that you bring those forward, and let's see what the timeline has been on them, because, okay, one motion left.
I made it,
Oh,
I seconded it. like
Seconded.
3 times.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, unanimous.
We got you a gavel. John?
You did?
We did. We forgot to bring it, but it came in from Amazon. So